Hello there, and welcome to Everything About Earth. Tonight we lean into a question, one that lingers like breath in the frozen air. What was Earth like during the Ice Age? Wherever you are, whether in daylight or darkness, I hope you are comfortable, ready to drift with me, ready to let the mind walk slowly through a world that is both ancient and strangely familiar. If these journeys bring you calm, perhaps you might let your heart linger here again, to listen, to dream. Now, let's begin. The earth waits beneath a great hush of cold. Vast sheets of ice stretch outward, their surfaces glowing with a pale, bluish light. They are not still, though they appear so. Each sheet is a river of frozen time, flowing at a pace too slow for human eyes. They press down with such weight that mountains groan and valleys bend. This is not merely weather. This is an age of the planet. Imagine a silence so complete that even the air seems to stand still. Snow falls without sound, drifting onto snow, already thousands of years old. In this world, the sun arcs low, casting long shadows across endless white. Nights are sharp and glittering, skies filled with stars undimmed by smoke or city light. Constellations wheel above herds of mammoth and bison moving across a tundra that stretches beyond sight. And beneath the ice, the earth continues to breathe. Volcanic fires smolder in their chambers. Rivers trickle unseen under kilometers of frozen stone. Ocean currents shift, carrying warmth in strange directions, as if the planet itself adjusts, seeking balance in its long exhale of cold. Science tells us that much of the northern hemisphere lies buried under glaciers, some 2 miles thick. North America, northern Europe, Asia, lands we know today vanish beneath their crushing weight. Sea levels fall by more than 100 meters, revealing coastlines unfamiliar to us now. Bridges of land connect places separated in our age. Asia to North America cross the Bering Plain, Australia to New Guinea, Britain to Europe. A different map drawn by the hand of ice. Yet, for all its harshness, this frozen earth is not empty. Life persists. Woolly rhinoceroses graze on frozen grasses. Lions stalk across the snow. Great birds take flight over windswept plains. And small bands of humans huddle around fire, the warmth flickering against stone walls. Their breath rises, in clouds, and their voices carry in whispers through caverns that still remember. What if, in this silence, the earth itself holds memory? Each layer of ice, pressed and compacted, becomes a page in a slow book of climate and time. Each bubble of ancient air trapped in the frozen depths holds a fragment of atmosphere, a breath from a world long gone. To study these bubbles is to listen to whispers carried forward across millennia. And what if the animals who walk here also hold memories? The mammoth's slow tread, the bison's curved horn, the lion's yellow eye. Each gesture carries deep inheritance from earlier ages. Survival is written into their fur, their bones, their instincts. They do not think of epochs, yet they embody them. They are the age itself, walking across the ice. The sky above tells another story. In this cold, the air is thin, dry, clear. Stars blaze with impossible brilliance. Imagine standing on the tundra. No fire, no sound, only the vast stretch of snow beneath and the river of the Milky Way above. Light, older than humanity, falls silently on frozen ground. Does the earth notice? Does the sky itself keep watch? There is a rhythm here. Ice does not rush. It advances, waits, recedes. Tens of thousands of years rise and fall like the tides of an ancient sea. The earth tilts on its axis, wobbles slightly in its orbit, and these small motions set the stage for entire ages of ice and thaw. Our world breathes in cycles far larger than our own lives. Cycles that continue whether or not we notice. And still, in the quiet, a question lingers. What is it like for a planet to be covered, reshaped, concealed beneath silence? Does the Earth dream while sleeping under ice? If so, what dream is it? One of patience or one of memory? Now, gently, imagine yourself here. Snow crunching beneath your feet. A sky unbroken by cities. The breath of a mammoth steaming in the cold dawn. The world is both alien and intimate, distant and familiar. And all around, the deep rhythm of ice and stone continues, beyond hurry, beyond measure. The frozen earth stretches into the horizon, a vast stillness under pale skies. Ice sheets loom like mountains of glass, their surfaces catching the light of a muted sun. They seem eternal, yet they are always moving, slow currents of frozen stone, grinding down forests, carrying away boulders, sculpting the very bones of the continents. The land beneath groans, then yields, reshaped by the weight of ages. Imagine a river that flows not in days or years, but in millennia. That is what a glacier is. A river that crawls, patient and unstoppable. Pebbles become sand, valleys deepen into wide U-shaped hollows, entire lakes are carved in silence. The earth itself is the sculptor, though it works with tools of ice. Science offers grounding in this image. During the height of the last glacial maximum, ice covers nearly a third of the planet's surface. Some sheets stretch thousands of kilometers across, pressing 2 miles deep. The Laurentide ice sheet blankets much of North America. In Europe, ice grips Scandinavia and pushes south into Germany and Poland. Asia holds its own frozen giants. Each sheet expands and retreats like the slow tide of geological time. And yet, even here, beneath this immensity, life persists. Musk. Oxen paw through snow to reach fragile grasses. Wolves shadow them, lean and persistent, waiting for weakness. The mammoth, with curved tusks glistening, moves through drifts, its body a furnace against the cold. Each creature carries an ancient knowledge, how to live when earth hardens into silence. What if the ice itself remembers them? Each flake falling on fur, each storm burying tracks, all pressed deeper with each season. Could the glaciers carry impressions, like a memory of every living thing that brushed against their surface? Perhaps deep within the frozen blue lies an archive not only of air and dust, but of presence. For humans, this is a world both cruel and beautiful. Small bands move along the edges of ice, seeking game, seeking shelter. They learn to read the land's subtle signs, where herds gather, where rivers run beneath snow, where caves open their quiet mouths. Fire becomes their sun, carried wherever they go, a portable star. Around it, songs form, stories stretch, memory lengthens. In this age of endless cold, culture itself becomes a tool of survival. The sky above is restless. Winds sweep across. Barren steppes, carrying fine dust ground from rock by the slow advance of ice. This dust drifts across continents, settling in layers, forming soils that will one day feed vast fields of grain. Even in its cruelty, the Ice Age plants seeds for futures unseen, and still one cannot help but wonder, what if these glaciers had never melted? What if the rhythm of Earth's orbit had not shifted, loosening the cold's grip? Would our world be a frozen sphere, dotted with firelit bands of humans clinging to survival? Would civilization, as we know it, have ever taken root? Close your eyes and imagine standing at the edge of one of these great sheets. Before you rises a wall of ice, higher than cathedrals, more ancient than memory. It creaks, groans, and occasionally fractures with a thunderous crack, as though speaking in the slow voice of the earth. You are small here, a breath against eternity. And yet, in that breath, you are alive, part of the frozen story the earth continues to write. The ocean stirs quietly while the continents freeze. Beneath waves that seem unchanged, currents shift, bending and weaving like veins of the planet. The great conveyor belt of water, the thermohaline circulation, slows and quickens with each pulse of ice. Cold brine sinks into the depths. Warm streams rise and wander into distant seas. The oceans become a hidden heartbeat, steadying the earth through its long winter. From the surface, the sea appears endless and calm, but beneath lies a quiet drama. Creatures of the deep drift in darkness, unaware of the continents smothered by ice. Plankton bloom in cold waters, feeding fish that move in schools like silver clouds. Whales follow these invisible highways, singing in voices that travel farther than mountains, voices that echo through liquid corridors older than humanity. Science suggests that as the ice locks away so much water, sea levels drop by more than 100 meters. Whole continental shelves lie exposed, wide and wind-scoured plains where today waves break. In the Ice Age, these hidden lands connect continents. Siberia to Alaska, Britain to Europe, Australia to New Guinea. People and animals wander across these bridges, leaving faint trails that vanish when the seas return. Imagine walking where now only salt water rests. Fields of grass stretch where the North Sea lies today. Rivers cut through what is now the Gulf of Thailand. Herds of reindeer move across the Bering Plain, their hooves drumming where whales will one day pass. The ocean reveals, then conceals, as if breathing in and out. What if the sea itself remembers those lost lands? What if beneath its tides lie not only stones and bones, but echoes of journeys across vanished worlds? Perhaps every wave that strikes the shore carries with it a whisper of all it has drowned. The Ice Age sky reflects these changes too. Winds sweep over the exposed shelves, stirring storms that rise and fall with the seasons. Dust carried from dry plains drifts into the ocean, nourishing blooms of life. Even as cold grips the continents, the seas feed and sustain, weaving resilience into the fragile web of survival. For humans, the ocean is both boundary and gift. Fish, seals, seabirds, resources gathered along shifting coasts. Canoes cut across shallow seas. Shores offer shells, driftwood, and stone. And yet, with every step, the horizon reminds them of mystery. Vast water, endless, unknowable. To look upon the sea in the Ice Age is to gaze into possibility, and into silence. And so, one may ask, what if these shifting seas shaped not just the land, but the imagination? Did the sight of disappearing coastlines give rise to myths of lost places, of sunken realms? Perhaps long before words for such things existed, the mind held a memory of land beneath water, a sense that the world changes, that nothing is fixed. Now, gently, picture yourself standing on a shoreline of the Ice Age. The tide withdraws across a plain where cities will one day stand. The wind is sharp, carrying the scent of salt and frost. Behind you lies the weight of glaciers, before you the breathing sea. You are balanced on the threshold between two immensities, ice and ocean, silence and motion, held in the timeless rhythm of a planet dreaming in cold. The sky above the frozen earth holds its own mysteries. It is a sky of cold light, washed clear of haze and smoke, a canvas vast and piercing. The air is thinner, sharper, and the stars blaze as if newly born. Constellations stretch with uncommon brilliance, their patterns carved more vividly into the memory of those who gaze upward night after night. Above the ice, auroras unfurl like green fire, shimmering ribbons drawn across the heavens by unseen hands. They ripple silently, yet their light feels alive, as though some presence is moving through the atmosphere. To those who huddle below, wrapped in furs around a meager fire, such visions must seem both wonder and omen, celestial movements written In colors, the night does not usually hold. Science explains that in colder times, with the Earth's magnetic field shifting, auroras flare more frequently, dancing further south. The Ice Age sky is more alive with them, a nightly theater of light, over snowy plains. Imagine a mammoth grazing beneath emerald curtains of moving flame, or a child lifting eyes to a horizon where the heavens themselves seem to breathe. The sun, too, takes on a different face. Its path across the sky is lower, its warmth muted, its presence more fleeting. Shadows stretch long over white expanses, giving the hours an elongated, dreamlike quality. The moon rises with a brilliance sharper than in our age, its light reflecting across snowfields until night itself glows. Under this silver wash, silence deepens, and every motion, an animal's step, a human breath, feels illuminated. What if this clarity of sky-shaped thought? What if, in watching stars with such sharpness, the mind of early humanity grew to wonder not only about survival, but about meaning? Perhaps, in the Ice Age, the heavens pressed themselves more deeply into human imagination, etching mystery into the marrow of memory. Consider the possibility that myths of later ages, stories of sky gods, of fires above, of lost realms beyond, the horizon, may carry echoes of what was once seen in these cold skies. Could the auroras be remembered as spirits, the constellations as hunters and animals, the moon as a guide through endless night? The Ice Age may not only have shaped the land and the body, but also the imagination itself. Now, allow yourself to picture this sky. You stand upon a frozen steppe, the horizon endless, the world hushed. Above you, the Milky Way spills like powdered ice, dense with stars uncountable. An aurora drifts across, shifting as though alive. The air bites with cold, yet the heavens burn with light. In this silence, time feels unmoored. You are not bound to centuries or civilizations. You are simply present beneath the eternal canopy, breathing slowly, watching as Earth's frozen sky dreams above you. Forests retreat before the advancing cold. Where once great stands of oak and pine spread their green canopies, now only scattered. Birches cling to the edge of the frost. Trees thin out, their roots failing in frozen soil, their trunks bending before the weight of endless winter winds. Behind them, tundra expands, a land of moss, lichen, and hardy grasses stretching into horizons of pale silence. It is a quiet exodus, slow yet relentless. Generations of trees vanish not with sudden violence, but with the patient withdrawal of climate. Seeds no longer take root. Leaves no longer unfurl. The forest line moves southward, step by step, year by year, until the places where songbirds once filled the air are replaced by the cries of ravens above snow. Science reveals the pattern in pollen buried deep within sediments. Each layer tells of a shifting world, oak giving way to pine, pine giving way to spruce, spruce yielding finally to tundra grass. It is a record not of catastrophe, but of transformation, a slow reshaping written in the smallest grains of dust. Imagine walking across this threshold. Behind you, a forest of whispering trees, their needles stirring in the cold wind. Ahead of you, an open plain, wind-swept and bare, stretching into the distance. The edge is neither abrupt nor final, but it carries with it a sense of departure. Here, the memory of forests lingers, even as they fade. Animals follow the change. Elk move south with the retreating woods. Bears withdraw to dens, waiting for seasons that never truly return. In their place come reindeer, steppe bison, and horses, creatures of the open ground, adapted to distance, to endurance. The land shifts its rhythm, and with it, life adapts. What if trees remember their retreat? Each fallen trunk, each seed, That never found soil could be seen as a mark of memory, a quiet testimony to resilience and loss. Perhaps the earth itself holds these silences as much as it holds fossils or stone. For humans, the shifting forest means new challenges. Wood for fire grows scarce on the tundra. Caves and animal bones replace branches as material for shelter. Yet the imagination adapts too. Where once trees were carved into spears, now tusks are shaped, hides stretched, stones sharpened. Even absence teaches. And so a question lingers. What if memory itself is shaped by loss? What if the human mind, faced with the vanishing of forests, first learned the power of story to hold what could no longer be touched? Perhaps the memory of green, of leaves and shade, traveled through generations like a myth, carried in words long before forests returned. Now, let the image rest in your mind. A lone tree stands at the edge of a frozen plain, its branches bare, its shadow stretched long across snow. Behind it, silence waits. Before it, the wind runs free. You stand there too, a witness to the slow retreat, feeling how even the absence of forest becomes a presence in itself. Across the endless white, life persists in forms both immense and fragile. Animals of the Ice Age walk with a kind of solemn endurance, shaped by millennia of cold. The mammoth, its coat thick and heavy, moves like a slow mountain across the steppe. Each step presses deep into frozen ground, leaving tracks that linger long before wind erases them. Its curved tusks sweep wide arcs through the air, pale crescents against the gray sky. Nearby, herds of steppe bison graze on sparse grasses, their dark forms clustered close, steam rising from their nostrils in the bitter air. They huddle together, for warmth, their horns sharp, their bodies compact, every feature built for survival in a land where cold is constant. Predators walk here too. The cave lion, larger than any lion of our age, prowls through snowdrifts, its paws silent, its amber eyes steady. Saber-toothed cats lie in wait, their elongated teeth glinting faintly, reminders that even in the stillness of ice, danger breathes. Wolves follow the herds, their shadows stretched thin across the tundra, patient and tireless. Science reveals the richness of this vanished world, often called the mammoth steppe. It is not barren, though it appears so. Beneath the snow, hardy grasses and herbs thrive, sustaining vast populations of grazers, which in turn sustain the hunters. This steppe stretches from Spain to Siberia, across Beringia into North America, an ecosystem unmatched in scale, a single, sweeping stage for survival. What if, in their silence, these animals shaped the imagination of those who shared the land with them? To walk beside creatures so massive, so enduring, must have impressed upon the human mind a sense of reverence. Perhaps the first myths were born not only in caves but on open plains, whispered around fires while mammoth shadows loomed beyond the light. Imagine, for a moment, the sound of it. A herd of mammoths shifting as one, the snow creaking under, their weight. The low call of bison echoing across the plains. The sudden cry of a predator breaking silence, answered by the thundering retreat of hooves. The tundra is not empty. It vibrates with life, with hunger, with survival. And yet, extinction lingers on the horizon. Many of these creatures will vanish as the ice recedes, their endurance finally outpaced by change. What if they had survived? Would human history have unfolded differently, sharing the continents with mammoths and saber-toothed cats? Would our cities rise in their shadows? Or would we remain wanderers, forever adapting to their presence? Now, hold the image gently. A mammoth calf presses close to its mother, warm beneath a sheltering coat. Breath rises in the frozen dawn. Nearby, wolves pace, their eyes steady, their hunger sharp. Above, ravens circle in the pale sky, their wings the only sound. This is the world of animals in the Ice Age, a world of resilience, of endurance, of silence broken only by survival. In the deep cold, humans endure, small fires flickering against the vast immensity of ice. Around these fragile circles of warmth, bands gather, their faces lit in amber glow, shadows stretching across stone walls. Fire is more than heat here. It is memory, protection, and presence. Without it, survival falters. With it, the night becomes a little less endless. The Ice Age human is a wanderer, wrapped in hides, carrying stone tools, moving with the herds and the seasons. Camps rise and vanish, leaving faint traces on the landscape. Charred bones, flint shards, ash buried beneath snow. Each ember is a spark against time, a declaration of existence in a world that could easily swallow all trace. Science uncovers these remnants. Fire pits blackened by charcoal dated tens of thousands of years, clusters of mammoth bones cracked to release marrow, small ornaments carved from ivory. They are not just tools of survival, but evidence of imagination. In the harshest cold, humans create. They carve patterns, string beads, trace ochre shapes on stone. Even when food is scarce, the spirit reaches beyond necessity. Imagine a group, huddled within a cave, snow drifting outside. Flames cast flickering patterns upon the walls. A child leans close, eyes wide with wonder, as an elder traces lines in the air, telling of hunts, of animals, of the sky above. Fire becomes a stage, shadows its performers, and story its enduring gift. What if fire itself is the first teacher, not just of warmth, but of rhythm, of imagination? Could the human mind have expanded by gazing into flames, seeing forms emerge, patterns shift, sparks rise like stars? Perhaps fire was the mirror in which humanity first recognized its own capacity to dream. And so fire is carried, carefully guarded, tended with devotion. Coals wrapped in bark, embers nursed through wind and snow. Each spark links past to future, one generation to another, one journey to the next. It is not just survival. It is continuity, the thread that binds the human story across ages. Now, picture yourself sitting within that circle. Cold presses outside, but within the ring of light. Faces glow, eyes reflect flame, breath rises in soft clouds, voices murmur in low tones, and the crackle of wood fills the silence between words. Beyond the cave, mouth lies darkness and ice. Within, there is warmth, there is presence, there is the unbroken promise of human fire. Stone lies quiet in the frozen earth, yet in human hands it becomes memory. A shard of flint struck from a larger core reveals a sharp edge, gleaming in firelight. This edge cuts hide, shapes wood, but also leaves behind a trace of intention. Each tool, each flake, is more than survival. It is thought made visible. Imagination crystallized in stone. Archaeology uncovers these fragments scattered across plains, hidden in caves, buried beneath loess. Hand axes, scrapers, blades, objects simple in form, yet profound in meaning. Some are worn smooth from use, others lie pristine, as if set down and forgotten millennia ago. In each, one can sense a human presence. The mind that struck, the hand that held, the task that shaped. Imagine the sound. The sharp ring of stone against stone, sparks flying in the cave's dim glow. A rhythm emerges. Strike, turn, strike again. Generations learn this language of stone, passing it hand to hand, teaching without words. A tool is not merely made. It is taught. It is remembered. In this way, stone holds lineage. What if stone? Tools are among the first archives of humanity. Each fragment is a page, each flake a syllable, each blade a sentence in a story that stretches back beyond speech. Unlike bone or hide, stone endures. It waits patiently in the soil, carrying silent witness to those who once lived. Perhaps stone remembers better than we do. And what of the symbols carved into it? Etchings of lines, spirals, crosshatches, patterns that seem to exceed utility. Some say these are counting marks, others say they are decoration. But perhaps they are something more. What if they are early whispers of abstraction, the first tentative gestures toward art, mathematics, or language? In the Ice Age, stone is more than material. It is a companion. It cuts the meat of hunted animals, shapes the wooden shaft of a spear, strikes sparks that kindle flame. In its durability, it mirrors the endurance of those who wield it. Through stone, humanity learns precision, patience, foresight, the foundations of imagination itself. Now, picture a tool resting in the snow, left behind thousands of years ago. Its edges are chipped, worn, but still sharp. The hand that shaped it is gone, the fire that lit it extinguished, the hunt it served long over. Yet here it lies, a fragment of thought frozen in time. You bend to pick it up, and in that moment, across ages, the silence of stone becomes a voice. The glaciers move, though to human eyes they seem still. Walls of ice rise higher than cathedrals, wider than valleys, yet they are not fixed. They creep forward, inch by inch, crushing forests, grinding mountains, sculpting the world beneath. Their weight. Each flake of snow, pressed by the burden of centuries, becomes crystal, then ice, then a sheet that flows like a frozen tide. To stand before such a mass is to feel small, almost erased. The glacier groans within itself, a deep, resonant sound like the voice of stone. Crevasses open suddenly, blue chasms descending into lightless depths. At the front, chunks of ice calve away, falling with a thunder that shakes the air, splintering into fragments that float like shattered glass. Even in its slowness, the glacier carries moments of violence. Science tells us these rivers of ice reshape entire continents. They carve valleys into U-shaped hollows, drag boulders hundreds of kilometers, leave behind ridges of gravel and sand. The Great Lakes of North America, the fjords of Scandinavia, the plains of northern Europe, all are gifts of ice, landscapes written by its patient hand. Each ridge and hollow is a memory of where the glacier once passed. Imagine tracing a hand. Along the polished rock left behind, its surface smoothed like glass, striations cut deep as though by the claws of a giant. These marks remain long after the ice retreats, inscriptions of movement that cannot be erased. To walk among them is to walk through the handwriting of the earth. What if glaciers are the planet's sculptors, shaping not only land, but also the way life unfolds upon it? By redirecting rivers, they alter migration. By creating lakes, they carve new habitats. By exposing fresh stone, they invite new growth when the thaw comes. Perhaps civilization itself is rooted in landscapes once drawn by ice. For humans of the Ice Age, glaciers are both boundary and presence. They define the edges of the known world, barriers of cold and silence that few dare cross. To live near them is to hear their constant voice, the cracking, the rumbling, the faint hiss of meltwater trickling beneath. They are not simply backdrops, they are forces, companions, looming guardians of time. Now, allow yourself to imagine standing at the foot of such a glacier. Before you, a wall of blue rises into the clouds, streaked with white and shadowed with gray. The air is sharp, filled with the scent of cold stone. Beneath your feet, the ground vibrates with the slow movement of the ice, a heartbeat deeper than sound. You are present at the edge of an ancient river, one that does not flow with water, but with time itself. The sound of absence is everywhere. Under the heavy breath of ice, the world grows quiet. Forests no longer murmur with leaves. Rivers lie locked beneath frozen skins. The air holds fewer voices, only the wind, low and endless, moving across open tundra. It is a silence not of stillness alone, but of weight, as if the earth itself exhales slowly and does not draw breath again for thousands of years. Silence in the Ice Age is not empty. It carries meaning, the crunch of snow beneath the mammoths. Steppe echoes far into the plain. The distant howl of wolves lingers longer in the air, sharper against the hush. Even human voices, spoken softly around the fire, seem louder in contrast, words rising like fragile threads against the immensity of quiet. Science reveals how different this world truly is. With so much water locked into ice, coastlines recede, and the seas fall silent along their shrunken edges. Wetlands vanish, birds abandon their marshy songs, and entire soundscapes disappear. Acoustic ecologists might call this a thinning of the planet's voice, an age where certain notes are muted while others, wind, cracking ice, the call of endurance, become dominant. Imagine listening to this silence. You walk across an empty plain, no trees, no rivers, only the brittle grass bending beneath the cold wind. Your footsteps sound like thunder to your ears, though they barely mark the ground. In the distance, the glacier shifts, and the deep groan it makes feels less like noise and more like the voice of Earth itself. What if silence is its own kind of archive? Each age of the planet carries a different balance of sound, some dominated by birdsong and insects, some by oceans and forests, and this one by ice and wind. Perhaps memory is not only written in stone and bone, but also in the echoes of what once filled the air. If so, the Ice Age is remembered not just by what we see, but by what we do not hear. For the humans of this world, silence can be both gift and peril. The absence of sound sharpens listening. Every rustle, every distant crack is a sign to be read. A hunter hears the faint crunch of hooves long before the herd appears. A mother hears the cry of a child echo in ways that pierce the heart. In this world, to listen is to survive, and so silence becomes a companion, shaping thought itself. Around the fire, when voices fade and only embers crackle, imagination fills the spaces that words leave empty. Stories take root not only in speech, but in the vast quiet that surrounds it. What if silence is the true canvas of human story, the space into which meaning is painted? Now, gently imagine sitting in the heart of this silence. The wind stills, the snow rests, no animal calls, no tree stirs, only your own breath moves in the frozen air. In that moment, you realize the absence itself is alive, a presence larger than you, a presence that holds you in its slow and patient embrace. Across the pale horizon, the wind carries more than cold. It lifts fine particles of dust, ground from mountains by the steady teeth of glaciers. These grains, small as whispers, rise into the air and drift for hundreds of miles, veiling the land in a faint gray shimmer. It is the breath of stone, made weightless, carried on the endless exhale of the Ice Age. The dust settles slowly, building layers so thin they seem invisible. Yet over thousands of years they become deep blankets of loess, soil born from silence, rich and fertile, waiting for seasons yet to come. Today, much of the world's most fertile farmland rests on this ancient gift. The plains of China, the valleys of Europe, the fields of North America. Crops grow where once only dust fell, a quiet inheritance from the glaciers. Imagine standing on that step, eyes narrowed against the sharp wind. The air tastes dry, carrying the grit of distant mountains. Around you, herds move through the haze, their forms softened by the drifting veil. Every gust reshapes the ground, erasing tracks, covering bones, smoothing the marks of passage. Time itself seems to dissolve into dust. Science tells us that these winds blow strongest at the edge of ice, where cold air tumbles into warmth, creating vast storms that scour the land. The dust they carry darkens glaciers, speeding their melt, even as it nourishes distant plains. It is a cycle both destructive and sustaining, a paradox born on the wind. What if each grain of dust is a fragment of memory? A piece of mountain ground away, a record of weight and pressure now lifted and scattered across the world. Could it be that the soil beneath our feet carries not only minerals, but the silent story of glaciers long vanished? When we plant seeds today, are we also planting in the memory of ice? For humans of the Ice Age, dust is both companion and burden. It stings the eyes, clogs the throat, settles on furs and food alike. Yet it also marks the path of survival. Where Los collects, grasses root. Where grasses grow, herds gather. And where herds move, people follow. Even in its harshness, the dust becomes guide. Now, imagine walking through such a storm. The sky dims, though no cloud looms above, only the endless breath of the earth carrying fragments of itself across the plain. You wrap your face in hide, lean into the gust, and press forward. Around you, the world becomes ghostly, shapes blurred, colors muted, sound swallowed. You walk not only through dust, but through time, each grain a trace of something older than memory, drifting, settling, waiting. Shelter is everything in the world of ice. Wind scours the plains, snow drifts into valleys, and cold seeps into bone. To endure, humans seek refuge where the earth itself opens, caves that breathe with darkness, stone hollows that shield from a storm. Within these chambers, fires burn, walls glow with flickering light, and the air carries the mingled scent of smoke and damp stone. But caves are not the only sanctuaries. On the open steppe, where no mountain offers refuge, shelters rise from what the land provides. Mammoth bones, curved and heavy, are set into circles. Tusks arch like pale ribs of a colossal creature, covered with hides stretched taut, anchored, with stone. Within, warmth gathers, voices murmur, sleep returns. These houses of bone stand against the winds, monuments of ingenuity and survival. Archaeologists uncover such structures in the frozen soil of Ukraine and Russia. Rings of mammoth skulls, jawbones arranged in patterns, fragments of tusks still bearing the marks of human hands. Charcoal scatters the ground, beads and tools lie among the remains, and ash stains the earth where fires once glowed. Each circle tells not only of survival, but of imagination, the ability to see shelter where none seems possible. Imagine stepping into such a dwelling. Outside, the wind howls across the tundra. Inside, hides rustle softly. A hearth glows at the center, and shadows of tusks curve around like a cathedral of bone. Children curl against their mothers, hunters sharpen stone blades, an elder hums, softly in the firelight. The space is fragile, yet it feels immense. A world within a world, carved not from forest or city, but from the memory of beasts. What if these shelters were more than necessity? What if they carried symbolism, too? A dwelling built of mammoth bones as a gesture of respect, or kinship, or even prayer. Perhaps each home was not only protection from the cold, but a recognition of the deep relationship between human and animal, survival and sacrifice. Could the very walls have been seen as guardians, protectors, ancestors? For those who lived here, shelter was not permanent. Camps rose and fell with the seasons. Yet the memory of each dwelling lingered, both in the land and in the stories told. Around the fire, each structure was both home and marker, a sign of where life pressed forward against the cold. Now, let yourself picture resting in such a place. The walls are pale tusks glowing in firelight. The ceiling is stitched hide moving gently in the wind. Beyond the entrance lies darkness, endless snow, silence. Within, there is warmth, there is breath, there is the fragile heartbeat of survival. In the Ice Age, shelter is not just stone and bone. It is hope, shaped by human hands against the immensity of cold. The Ice Age sky is restless with light. Above the frozen plains, the aurora drapes itself across the heavens, ribbons of green and violet, sometimes faint, sometimes blazing like celestial fire. They shimmer silently, shifting in waves as though the sky itself is alive, breathing in colors unknown to ordinary nights. For those who live beneath them, these lights are more than beauty. They are mystery, perhaps even message. Fires of the heavens moving without sound, painting the darkness with living patterns. Imagine a small group huddled on the tundra, necks craned, eyes wide, as the sky ripples above. No explanation is given, only wonder. The aurora becomes story, a spark for the imagination, a presence woven into human memory. Science explains the phenomenon. Solar winds colliding with Earth's magnetic field, particles dancing along invisible lines of force. During glacial ages, with thinner atmosphere and stronger storms of charged particles, these lights blaze more fiercely, reaching further south than in our present time. In the Ice Age, many who never see them today would have lived under their glow and the stars. How sharp they must have seemed. With no cities, no smoke, no haze, the Milky Way stretches across the sky like a river of powdered snow. Constellations are etched with such clarity that they feel closer, almost touchable. Planets glow brighter, the moon casts sharper shadows, meteors streak silently across horizons of white. Each night sky is a cathedral of light, immense and unbroken. What if this sky shaped the birth of myth? What if the stories of constellations, the tales of gods and beasts above, began here, in the sharp clarity of Ice Age stars? Perhaps the first humans traced animals in the heavens because they walked beside those same creatures on the earth, mammoths, in the steppe mirrored by giants in the sky, hunters below watching hunters above. Imagine yourself lying back on frozen ground, wrapped in furs, the cold pressing close, yet eyes fixed upward. Above you, auroras drift, stars blaze, the moon rises, silver over snow. Time loses its meaning. There is only sky, only breath, only silence. In that stillness, the universe feels near, as though it leans closer to whisper, and all you can do is listen. The oceans draw back, their waters locked away in vast fields of ice. Sea levels fall, not by inches or even meters, but by more than 100 meters across the globe. What is hidden today lies revealed then. Broad plains, wide valleys, whole continents of Earth stretching where now only waves roll. The map of the Ice Age is not the map we know. Asia reaches outward into the Pacific, its arm joined to the land we call Australia. New Guinea is no island, but part of a greater whole. In the north, Siberia and Alaska touch across a wide bridge of earth and grass, a world of rivers and herds where today only sea divides. Europe, too, extends its reach. Britain still bound to the continent by low plains, green under cold winds. Science calls these spaces land bridges, temporary gifts of lowered seas. They are not barren, but alive with grasses and herds. Reindeer. Cross them. Steppe bison graze. Wolves follow, and humans too set foot upon these new paths. Generations walk across landscapes that will vanish when the seas return. Trails are left, lives lived, yet in time the waters rise and drown them in silence. Imagine standing where now the North Sea lies, the horizon open, the land stretching flat and endless. Rivers cut across the plain, birds wheel overhead, camps, smoke in the distance. It is a country without a name, a place we cannot visit except in memory. Beneath the waves today, fragments remain, tools, bones, traces of hearths, reminders of a world hidden, but not gone. What if these drowned plains hold the earliest chapters of human story? What if migration itself, the spreading of our kind across continents, was guided by the low seas of the Ice Age? Perhaps languages, myths, even the first exchanges between distant groups took root on lands now buried by water. In their submersion, entire histories slip from reach. The thought lingers. How many beginnings lie beneath the sea? How many journeys vanished? How many voices silenced? And yet, perhaps the ocean holds them still, as memory beneath its restless tides. Now, let yourself imagine walking across the Bering Plain. Wind cuts across your face, grasses bend in waves, herds darken the horizon. Behind you lies Asia, ahead, the vast unknown of the Americas. Each step is both ordinary and immense, one foot placed in front of another, yet carrying humanity into a new world. Around you the air is filled with silence, but beneath your feet history unfolds. Journeys unfold across the white earth, slow migrations carved into the memory of the land. Humans walk with the herds, following the rhythm of seasons, the turning of sky, the pull of hunger. Across tundra plains and frozen rivers, their footprints stretch, fragile marks soon erased by wind and snow, yet each one a step in a journey that shapes the future. Animals, too, are travelers. Reindeer sweep across the mammoth steppe in herds so vast that the horizon itself seems to move. Their hooves carve trails into permafrost, tracks that others follow, wolves, lions, and humans alike. Bison wander, mammoths roam, horses gallop, through open fields of frost. Each movement weaves into the great tapestry of migration, a pattern of life that pulses even in cold. Science traces these journeys through bones and artifacts scattered across continents. From Africa to Europe, from Asia into the Americas, humans spread, carrying fire, language, and memory. Along the way, they adapt, clothing stitched tighter, tools refined, shelters built stronger. The journey is not a straight path, but a branching river, flowing into new lands, filling the earth slowly with presence. Imagine the crossing of Beringia. Wind presses against faces wrapped in furs. Children ride on sleds, goods strapped to the backs of dogs. Herds graze nearby, their breath steaming in the dawn. The land bridge is wide, hundreds of kilometers across, not a narrow path but a vast country of its own. Camps rise along rivers, fires glow in the distance. Those who walk here do not think of continents, only of survival, yet each step carries humanity into new worlds. What if the journey itself is as important as the destination? What if human imagination grew precisely because of the endless walk, because horizons always called, because the land was never still? Perhaps curiosity is not an accident, but the inheritance of migration, a restlessness written into the spirit by ages of movement across frozen ground. For those who travel, the sky is compass, the stars their map. The wind tells direction, rivers guide paths, the herds show where life flows. Each landmark, rock outcrop, bend of river, cluster of trees, is stored in memory, passed in story, shared in song. Knowledge of the land becomes as essential as food or fire. Now, close your eyes and imagine yourself within such a band. The crunch of snow beneath many feet, the sound of breath rising in cold air, the murmurs of voices carried on wind. You look ahead. The horizon stretches white, endless, unknown. Yet still you walk. Around you move the herd. Above you turns the sky. Beneath you flows the earth. You are part of the journey, woven into its quiet, patient rhythm. Hunger and plenty weave together in the Ice Age, two faces of the same vast landscape. On some days the earth feels abundant, Herds of reindeer stretch to the horizon, mammoths. Graze in slow procession, rivers teem with fish beneath their frozen skin. For a moment, the land seems generous, its table laid with life. But the cold is unrelenting, and abundance is fragile. Storms sweep in without warning, driving snow that buries pasture and hides the herds. A sudden thaw refreezes, trapping animals in ice. Seasons shift unexpectedly, and the plenty dissolves into emptiness. Hunters return to camp with nothing, bellies tighten, and the firelight flickers over hollow faces. Science reveals the precarious balance of Ice Age survival. Isotopes in ancient bones show cycles of feast and famine, years of growth followed by years of hunger. Large animals, though numerous, are unpredictable. A single mammoth can feed a band for weeks, yet the hunt is dangerous. Success uncertain. More often, survival comes from the small. Fish caught beneath ice, roots dug from frozen ground, marrow cracked from bones left by predators. Imagine the contrast of these moments. One night, the camp overflows with meat, fires burn high, laughter echoes and fat hisses in the flames. Children fall asleep with full stomachs. Elders hum softly as the smell of roasting meat fills the air. The next night, silence rules. Only thin broth bubbles in a pot, and every eye turns toward the horizon, wondering when the herds will return. What if hunger itself shaped the human mind? What if the constant shift between abundance and scarcity carved into memory the ideas of sharing, of storing, of planning for futures unseen? Perhaps imagination grew not from leisure alone, but from necessity. The need to dream of food before it appeared, to envision tomorrow in order to survive today. For animals, too, the rhythm of feast and famine defines life. Wolves grow lean. In the hungry season, their ribs sharp, their eyes restless. Ravens circle, waiting for scraps. Even mammoths feel the edge of scarcity, searching for grasses beneath the snow, tearing bark from frozen trees. The Ice Age does not grant comfort freely. Every breath is one. Now, let yourself picture the firelit circle of a camp in midwinter. A mammoth hunt has succeeded, and the air is filled with the scent of meat. Faces glow, voices rise, joy is shared. Beyond the reach of firelight lies the frozen plain, silent, waiting, already preparing the next test. Between hunger and plenty, life moves like a pendulum, and survival is the balance it seeks. Extinction moves quietly through the Ice Age, a silence deeper than winter itself. One by one, voices fade. The heavy tread of mammoths lessens, the roar of cave lions softens, the step of giant ground sloths vanishes. At first, the land still feels full, herds thick, predators sharp, but slowly the chorus of life thins until whole songs are gone. The causes are many, woven together like threads. Climate shifts, warming, cooling, the endless rhythm of Earth tilting on its axis. Ice retreats, grasslands shrink, forests return, and creatures that thrived on open steppes lose their world. At the same time, humans spread further. Hunters, armed with fire and stone, their skill growing with each generation. The balance between predator and prey shifts. For some species, there is no place left. Science uncovers this story in bones buried beneath permafrost, in tusks scarred by human tools, in sudden absences in the fossil record. The mammoth steppe, once vast and rich, begins to contract. Within a few thousand years, species that had endured for millions disappear. What remains are fragments, frozen carcasses in Siberian soil, teeth and horns preserved in caves, paintings on walls that outlast the animals themselves. Imagine the last of a species, a lone mammoth walking across a snowfield, no herd beside her. Each step falls heavy, her breath clouding in the cold air, her ears alert though no familiar call answers. She walks not knowing she is the last, carrying within her body the memory of millions of years soon to end in silence. What if extinction itself is a kind of memory? Each vanished creature leaves a mark, not just in bone or soil, but in absence. Perhaps the earth remembers them not only through what remains, but through what is missing. The silence where once there was sound, the emptiness where once herds moved like rivers across the plains. For humans, the fading of species may have carried both loss and transformation. To hunt an animal into absence is to shift the balance forever. Did those early people feel the weight of it? Or did they simply move forward, adapting as always, unaware that entire voices were vanishing behind them? Now, imagine yourself in a cave, torchlight flickering against painted walls. Horses, lions, mammoths, bison, shapes move across stone, alive in ochre and charcoal. The artist's hand seeks to keep them present, to hold them against silence. You realize that perhaps art itself is born of extinction, an attempt to preserve what the world itself cannot keep. And in that thought, the Ice Age grows quiet once more. The cold has patience beyond measure. It does not rush, it does not falter, it simply waits, pressing its weight upon the land. Glaciers creep forward with quiet certainty, their edges grinding stone into powder, their depths compressing snow into crystal. Centuries pass, and the ice holds steady, unhurried, as if time itself bends to its rhythm. Mountains shrink beneath this patience. Valleys widen, their walls smoothed by the glacial hand. Rivers are redirected, basins carved, plains scoured clean. What seems eternal to us, rock, cliff, peak, becomes malleable under the persistence of frozen water. The cold teaches that nothing resists forever, that even stone is shaped by endurance. Science confirms the scale of this patience. Layers of ice cores reveal cycles of advance and retreat spanning tens of thousands of years. Dust, ash, and bubbles of ancient air lie trapped in crystalline pages, a record of the Earth's slow breathing. The cold moves in rhythm with orbital shifts, with tilts and wobbles of the planet's axis, with patterns so vast they extend beyond any human horizon. Imagine kneeling at the edge of such a glacier, pressing your palm against its blue wall. You feel nothing at first but chill. Yet, if you could wait, hours, days, centuries, you would notice the movement, the steady forward press. A slow tide, irresistible. Time compressed into silence. What if patience itself is a force as real as gravity? What if the ice teaches that the greatest transformations are those that occur unseen, unhurried, across spans longer than memory? Perhaps the Earth whispers this lesson through its glaciers, that endurance shapes more than power ever could. For humans, such patience is both obstacle and teacher. Camps are built at the edges, never upon the ice, for it gives no rest. Routes shift with the glacier's advance, herds redirect, rivers vanish. To live in this world is to adapt continually, to bend without breaking, to move as the land demands. In this way, human life begins to mirror the patience of the ice, surviving not by force, but by persistence. Now, allow yourself to imagine lying on the tundra at night, the glacier looming in the distance. The stars wheel slowly overhead. The wind carries a dry whisper across the plain. You close your eyes, and behind the silence you sense a movement, slow, vast, patient beyond imagining. It is the earth itself, shaping, waiting, remembering. And you, small and brief, are held within its long breath. Beneath the vast glaciers, rivers move unseen. Hidden in the dark, meltwater trickles through channels carved in silence, flowing under pressure, reshaping the frozen world from within. These subglacial rivers carve tunnels through ice, polish stone, and sometimes burst forth in sudden floods, carrying the memory of centuries in a single rush. To the human eye, the glacier appears solid, eternal. Yet inside, water flows, restless and alive. Pools gather in hidden chambers, lakes form beneath kilometers of ice, their surfaces never touched by sunlight. Some remain sealed for tens of thousands of years, cradling water as old as the Ice Age itself. Science has revealed these secret worlds. Beneath Antarctica today, hundreds of subglacial lakes remain, shielded from air and light, their ecosystems unknown. In the past, similar waters flowed under the vast sheets of the Pleistocene, shaping valleys and channels that later became rivers we know, like the Mississippi, the Thames, the Seine. Much of the modern landscape carries the marks of waters that once moved in the shadows of ice. Imagine listening from above. The glacier groans, silent on the surface, yet within it, a faint murmur runs, the whisper of unseen rivers. They carve paths not of days, but of millennia, unseen architects shaping the earth in secret. What if these hidden rivers carry more than water? What if they carry memory, fragments of life swept under, preserved in darkness? Perhaps even now, in sealed lakes beneath ice, ancient organisms wait, unseen heirs of a vanished world. If uncovered, they would speak not in words, but in survival, testimonies of endurance in silence. For the people who lived near glaciers, these hidden waters sometimes revealed themselves suddenly. Outbursts of meltwater tore through valleys, floods carving scars across the land. To those who witnessed them, they must have seemed like the anger of the ice itself, as though the glacier held a heart of water that could no longer be contained. And yet, the hidden flow was also a gift. Streams emerging at the edges of glaciers offered fresh water, fishing grounds, paths for travel. Even in the coldest world, water found its way, teaching that life persists wherever there is flow. Now, close your eyes and imagine kneeling beside the mouth of such a river. From beneath the towering wall of ice, water rushes, cold and clear, carrying pebbles and silt. The air smells sharp, alive with chill. You cup your hands, drink, and in that moment taste not only water, but time itself. Melted snow fallen centuries ago, carried patiently through darkness to this instant. The cold world is not without fire. From time to time, the earth itself breaks its silence and volcanoes rise in smoke and ash against the frozen horizon. Even in an age of ice, the planet's inner heat continues to speak, reminding all who dwell upon its surface that beneath the stillness, a molten heart endures. Eruptions pierce the sky with pillars of ash, spreading veils that drift across continents. For weeks or months, the sun grows dim, its light filtered through haze. Snow falls mixed with black dust, staining the white world in strange patterns. The air tastes of sulfur, sharp and metallic, as though the earth has exhaled a breath from deep within. Science records these events in layers of ice. Thin bands of volcanic ash are sealed within the Greenland and Antarctic cores, each marking an eruption long past. Through them, we trace histories. Mount Toba in Sumatra. Its vast eruption some 74,000 years ago, or smaller yet powerful outbursts in Iceland and Kamchatka during the height of glaciation. Even as glaciers stretched wide, fire, reshaped climate, darkening skies, cooling seasons further. Imagine standing at a distance, watching as a mountain blooms with flame against a backdrop of endless snow. The sky glows red in the night, lava spilling like liquid light, steam rising where fire meets ice. Around you, herds scatter, birds take flight, and silence breaks into a roar of earth and sky entwined. What if the people of that time saw such events not as destruction, but as message? Fire rising from stone, smoke reaching into the heavens. Perhaps it was read as a reminder that the world holds powers beyond measure, powers both creative and consuming. may be stories of fire gods, of underworlds, of mountains that speak, trace, back to nights when ice and flame stood side by side. For those who lived near volcanic lands, the ash left behind carried its own gifts. It nourished soil, making fertile ground where little else would grow. In time, after the ash settled, grasses returned thicker and herds gathered once more. Fire, like ice, reshaped, destroyed, and created. In its paradox lay survival. Now picture yourself in that strange light. Snow drifts softly, yet the horizon glows with red. Ash falls like black snow, each flake a fragment of the earth's deep furnace. You feel both fear and wonder, both distance and closeness, as if the planet itself has lifted its voice. Beneath the endless cold, the fire speaks, reminding you that even in silence, the earth dreams in heat. Stone holds breath. Deep in the earth, beyond the reach of wind and weather, walls wait with a patience older than memory. Firelight flickers across mineral skin, and shadows move like living things. Here, in chambers where the air tastes of damp limestone and old smoke, images appear, horses with arched necks, bison poised to turn, lions in profile, woolly rhinoceroses lifting pale horns. The Ice Age enters stone, and stone remembers. Pigment grinds beneath careful hands. Ochre, iron-rich, the color of rusted dawn, mixes with fat or water. Charcoal, born of fire, smears black lines that carry the weight of contour and motion. Manganese leaves deep purples, almost blue in certain light. A hollow bone becomes a blowpipe. Breath powders pigment across a palm pressed flat, leaving the negative of a hand. Pale, unmistakable, the first-person pronoun of prehistory. The cave wall becomes both page and skin, an intimate surface upon which a world is coaxed to appear. Science follows with quiet instruments. Radiocarbon dates trace charcoal to ages long past. Calcite crusts layered over images yield ages by uranium series clocks. In a cave near the Ardèche, lions and rhinos rise from walls more than 30 millennia old. In a valley of southwestern France, chambers bloom with aurochs, deer, and bulls, painted around 17,000 years before our present. Far away, on an island of Indonesia, red hand stencils bloom from limestone roughly 40,000 winters. Ago. The numbers do not shout. They whisper of distance, of persistence. The light in these spaces is always moving. Lamps carved from bone or stone burn animal fat with a small, steady flame. The fire throws shadows that slide across the uneven rock so that a bison's flank seems to breathe, a horse's mane seems to ripple. The painter knows this. The painter places lines to let the wall complete the illusion. The swell of limestone becomes muscle. A crack in the rock becomes a horn. The cave collaborates. Stone instructs the image in how to live. What if the paintings are not mere records, but agreements? What if, in a world of cold and hunger, human hands enter the earth to speak with animals as equals, offering pigment for presence, form for sustenance, line for life? Perhaps each figure is less a trophy than a vow. We see you, we depend on you. We carry you into a place the weather cannot erase. The hunt exists, but the image is not only the hunt. It is relation, remembrance, reciprocity. Acoustics murmur, another hint. Some chambers ring when a voice rises. Certain niches return a hum richer than others. Researchers notice patterns. The densest clusters of animals often lie where echoes gather, as if the wall chooses to answer. A singer's tone swells, a drumbeat on stone reverberates, and the image seems to move. What if sound guides the hand? What if the place where the cave sings also becomes the place where the bison lives, the horse runs, the mammoth lifts its curved moon-colored tusks? Outside, the winter holds fast. Wind combs the tundra, and sky bears a scatter of sharp stars. Inside, Warmth concentrates in a pool around the flame. The painter's breath fogs with each exhale. A palm steadies against rock. Fingers blacken with charcoal, redden with ochre. The hand repeats a gesture learned from elders who learned from theirs. Stroke, smudge, lift, blow. The animal is not invented. It is revealed from within the mineral grain, as if sleeping there all along. Tools are simple, but the vision is not. Some figures show shading, perspective, even motion by repetition of legs or heads, an early cinema flickering under tallow light. Engravings crosshatch the paint to deepen tone. Dots gather along bodies like constellations. Lines intersect, as if marking cycles. Are these calendars of animals and stars, maps of migration, or rhythms of the hunt? There is no answer, only continuity. A mind practices abstraction while honoring the immediate. The world outside is hunger and cold. The world inside is symbol and breath. Both are the same world. Imagine the ceremony of entrance. A small group descends into darkness, carrying lamps, carrying silence. Feet slip on damp stone. The air cools further, the ceiling lowers, the mouth of the earth narrows. Then a chamber opens, tall and round. Someone hums, testing the acoustics. Another raises a lamp toward a pale curve in the wall. The first figure comes alive. 4 black horses, muzzles turned as if to listen. No one speaks loudly. The images are not performed for noise. They are received like weather, like dawn. What if the negative handprints are less signatures than portals? The painter presses a palm to stone and exhales pigment around it, leaving a pale shape cradled by red. It is absence shaped like presence, presence shaped by absence. The hand says, "Here." The wall answers, "Stay." Could these hands be a way of becoming part of the cave's body, a way of saying that human and stone share a boundary that breath can cross? Time collects in the ceilings. Soot blooms in black films, layer upon layer, a sediment of flame. Drips of calcite gloss the edges of animals. A millennium later, someone returns to add another figure beside the old. The pigments share a wall, but not a lifetime. The cave becomes anthology, not by intent, but by endurance. Each visit folds into the last, and the last waits for the next, and the whole continues to breathe in darkness. Outside, histories remain, absent here. There is no empire, no city. There is only the slow circulation of herds, the persistence of winter, the narrow abundance of summer. Yet in these chambers the mind stretches beyond daily measure. The animals are immense, and so is attention. The painter remembers a particular curve of shoulder, the exact tilt of horn. Memory turns observational skill into tenderness, and tenderness into form. The wall receives it without judgment and keeps it with incorruptible patience. A small lamp rests on a shelf of rock. The flame steadies. The painter's eyes glisten with reflection. The animal's eyes catch the same glow. For a moment, stone and human and beast share a single light. Then the lamp is lowered. The figures slip back into half-shadow. They remain. The painter leaves. The cave closes its lips around the darkness again. Now, gently, imagine tracing the cool surface with a fingertip. Not to take, only to listen. The mineral grains are fine as flour in some places, rough as bark in others. A faint soot rubs off, a ghost of someone else's fire clinging to the skin. Breath is slow. Each drop in the distance is a metronome. In the corner, a pale handprint rests where a hand once lay flat. The mind leans toward it and understands nothing and everything that matters. Presence, relation, endurance. What if the cave is the first museum, temple and theater in one? What if it is also an ancestor, a being that holds and returns, that teaches silence and scale? In the Ice Age, art does not hang in frames. It lives inside the earth, beside water and echoes, under the gaze of stone. The lesson is not shouted. It arrives as a hush. That memory can be made, that beauty can accompany hunger, that breath can become image, and image can become a way of keeping the world alive. The lamp is pinched out. Darkness gathers like velvet, complete and soft. The figures do not vanish. They simply wait. Above ground, auroras unroll. Far off, a glacier speaks in its low voice. On the plain, a herd moves as one. The cave rests and remembers, and in its remembering, the Ice Age continues to dream. They call it the Mammoth Steppe, though it holds more than mammoths. It is a continuous skin of open ground, dry and wind-swept, stretching from the Atlantic coasts of Europe across Siberia, over the wide back of Beringia, and into the cold heart of North America. It is grass and herb and low shrub, stitched together by roots that clutch loess and frozen silt. It is sunlight pouring over a land without tall shade, a horizon that never seems to end. It is a world that breathes in winter, and does not forget summer. Here, the ground crunches with frost most of the year, yet blades of sedge and feathergrass rise whenever the short warmth returns. Artemisia scents the air with a faint, bitter green breath. In this openness, herds make their own weather. Mammoths plow through snow, exposing forage. Bison churn the crust to reach dry stalks. Horses paw the ground, stir dust, and carry seed in their shaggy coats. The animals are not just inhabitants, they are gardeners, engineers of a plain that stays a plain because their hooves insist upon it. Science finds this world in fragments, pollen grains caught in lake mud like yellow stars, beetle wing cases gleaming from ancient soil, spores of dung-loving fungi rising and falling with the fortunes of great herds. Ancient DNA seeps from permafrost, a script of plants and animals written in ice-bound letters. Together they sketch an ecosystem both austere and rich, low in trees, high in life, productive under a sky that keeps its clouds thin and its winds constant. The steppe is cold but not empty. It is spare but not poor. Imagine standing where this biome holds its breath. The sky is a clear bowl of pale blue. The ground flows in long, gentle swells, like a sea paused mid-surge. In the distance, dark shapes graze. Bison clustered tight, horses strung like beads along a ridge, saiga antelope lifting blunt faces to sniff the air. A woolly rhinoceros moves like a carved stone set into motion, horn catching the light. Farther, still, a mammoth herd advances with a patience only large bodies can keep, calves tucked within a fortress of legs. There is sound, but no clamor. The soft friction of grass, the steady clop of hooves, a raven's dry croak describing circles overhead. The steppe's fertility is a paradox of the Ice Age. Dust from grinding glaciers drifts like gray snow, laying down mineral wealth across the plains. Low precipitation keeps soils from leaching. Short, hard winters lock nutrients in place. Intense summer light coaxes a quick, dense burst of growth. The result is a pasture wide as a continent. Predators. Read it easily. Wolves quarter the ground by scent alone. Cave lions flow low against the earth, golden shadows stitched to wind. Foxes hunt the margin where grass gives way to snow. Everything belongs to the openness, and the openness belongs to the sky. What if the steppe itself is a memory the earth knows how to recall? Not a fixed place, but a mode the planet enters when cold and wind and grazing align, a chord struck across hemispheres, resonant and bright. If so, what does it remember now in the bones of permafrost, in the lowest hills, in the way grasses root in exposed silt? Perhaps an ecosystem is also a story the land tells when certain conditions rhyme. Humans walk this plain with measured steps. They learn its logic, that shelter is distance, that food is movement, that rivers are both path and boundary. Camps settle where a bluff breaks the wind, where a bend in water promises fish, where herds stream past with a regularity that becomes calendar. They make tools to fit openness, points for long throws, lines for wide water, clothing layered to trap the smallest warmth. In this place, the eye becomes long-sighted. A dark bead on the horizon is already a thought. Bison? Horse? Friend? Storm? The mind stretches to match the land. The steppe holds carbon in its cold heart. Yadoma, ice-rich silts laid down under mammoth skies, rises in bluffs that crumble when warmth and river take them. Within, plant remains rest in a freeze that outlasts time as humans measure it. Grass blades still green after tens of thousands of winters, seeds asleep like careful promises. The ground is both pantry and archive, stocked and inscribed by seasons, that knew no cities, only wind. Imagine kneeling at the edge of a thawing cut bank. The soil is dark, almost black where ice has bled into it. A tuft of ancient grass peels free, delicate as silk, intact enough to remember sunlight you have not seen. Cold air spills over your hands. Somewhere behind you, hooves drum faintly, as if echoing from another age. You breathe, and the smell is damp, mineral, clean, a scent of locked summers opening. What if the animals write the plain as surely as any glacier writes a valley? What if mammoth and bison are not simply features of the steppe, but letters of its alphabet, without which the sentence collapses? Their trampling keeps shrubs from closing the sky. Their dung returns what the wind removes. Their migrations move, nutrients like slow rivers. When they fade, the grammar changes. Willow and dwarf birch creep forward. Snow lies deeper in unbroken drifts. The land tells a different story, and the old one becomes hard to hear. Predators keep that writing taut. A herd that runs stays a herd that moves. Weakness falls away, strength circulates. Scavengers close the loop, returning bone and sinew to soil. Ravens, old companions, map the living plain from above. Dark cartographers reading the signatures of motion. Everything writes, everything reads. The wind turns the pages. Today, in a few northern places, people lead herds back onto low Arctic plains, testing a quiet idea that hoof and hunger can reopen grass, brighten snow, and cool the ground beneath. No certainty is claimed, only a patient question in a language the steppe might still understand. The experiment is small against the scale of ice, but scale has never been the only teacher. Sometimes the land listens in details. Sometimes a story begins with a hoof print in thin snow. Picture evening falling across this world. The light goes long and honey pale. Frost begins to pick at the edges of pools. Horses bunch shoulder to shoulder. A young bison tests his weight against a pier and then laughs in the way only bodies can laugh, by rejoining the herd. A mammoth mother uses her tusks to sweep aside crust for a calf who snuffles and eats. The sky turns first rose, then indigo, and then opens its cold archives of stars. Breath rises from every muzzle like offerings. The plain does not sleep. It rests in a wakefulness as wide as its horizon. What if you walk here in your mind whenever the present feels too narrow? What if the mammoth steppe is an inner room, a large, spare chamber, where thought can travel far without obstruction? In that room, hunger and abundance hold hands, death and motion share a single path, and the grammar of hoof and wind teaches how to endure without hardening, how to keep moving without losing the center. Now, gently, imagine your own footprints, pairing with those of a horse, then a bison, then a mammoth, as if the ground were composing a chord from many notes. The air is cold enough to clarify, not to injure. A raven draws a black stitch across the sky and lands on a low hummock to watch. You are small, but not diminished. The plain makes room for you the way the horizon makes room for the sun. Without effort, without possession. You listen, and the listening becomes the place. In the end, the mammoth steppe is not only a vanished geography, it is a way the earth once thought out loud, open, rhythmic, communal, spare. The animals carry the thought. The grasses voice it. The wind repeats it. The snow records it. The sky bears witness. Whether it can be spoken again is not a puzzle to solve tonight. It is a question to place gently on the sill of sleep, where it may wait with patience equal to winter's own. The weight of silence deepens beneath the ice. It is not only an absence of sound, but a presence in itself, a pressure that lies heavy on valley and mountain alike. Entire continents seem muffled, as though the planet has drawn a vast blanket across its own body. The air thins with quiet. The snow absorbs what little noise there is. Even the crack of a branch or the howl of a wolf seems swallowed before it can travel far. Beneath kilometers of ice, the earth waits. Rock bends under. The load sinking slowly so that later, when the ice retreats, the land will rise again in a long rebound, an exhalation measured in millennia. Each inch of descent, each slow lifting after, is silent to human ears, yet immense in scale. Imagine the crust of the earth itself bowing beneath the patience of frozen weight, a gesture too slow to see, but not too slow to feel. Science calls it isostasy, the balance between crust and mantle, the floating of land upon deeper rock. Where glaciers grow, land sinks. Where they melt, land rebounds. Scandinavia still rises today, an echo of the last ice, shorelines climbing inch by inch as though the ground itself remembers the burden it once carried. Canada, too, breathes upward, long after the sheets withdrew. The silence of the Ice Age continues in the slow motion of coastlines, bays becoming meadows, harbors turning to fields. What if silence is not empty, but a force that shapes? What if the earth, in its frozen hush, teaches that absence has its own gravity? Perhaps silence presses into memory as surely as stone presses into soil, leaving behind marks that guide how life unfolds long after the sound has gone. For humans who lived at the edge of the ice, the silence could be both gift and unease. Around, a fire. The stillness amplified voices, so that even whispers seemed to stretch farther than they should. Yet in the open tundra, the absence of sound could feel vast enough to swallow thought, leaving only the slow beat of the heart, the crunch of steps, the hiss of wind. Silence became a companion that shaped awareness, sharpening the senses, deepening the weight of every breath. Imagine sitting on a ridge at twilight. The herd has moved on. The camp lies quiet behind you. Before you stretches the great ice, rising like a wall into the fading sky. Nothing stirs. The air itself seems to hold its breath. In that moment, the silence feels alive, not hostile, not kind, but present. It does not demand, it does not explain. It simply waits, and in its waiting, it becomes impossible to ignore. Now, let yourself rest in that quiet. Hear nothing but your own breathing, steady and slow. Feel the stillness pressing against your skin like invisible snow. In that silence, you are held by something larger than yourself, something that does not need words, only patience. It is the silence of ice, the silence of stone, the silence of earth remembering itself. Night falls on the frozen world, and the stars come forward with unshaken clarity. Without smoke, without city lights, without even tall forest to dim the view, the heavens stretch enormous, spilling light across the tundra like frost. The Milky Way arches overhead in a river of white, fire so bright that it casts faint shadows on the snow. Constellations are etched sharper than in any sky we know, their lines drawn not by imagination alone, but by sheer brilliance. The silence of the earth mirrors the stillness of the sky. On the steppe, a herd lies at rest, mammoths standing in, a protective circle around calves. Wolves prowl at the edge of vision, their eyes glinting like the stars above. Ravens settle on frost-crusted branches, black silhouettes against the pale glow of the moon. All life seems to pause, as though listening upward, aware that the night itself is a presence. Science tells us that the atmosphere of the Ice Age, dry and cold, allowed stars to shine with rare intensity. Aurorae danced more frequently, shifting, curtains of green and violet sweeping across the horizon. Meteors, unmuted by haze, flashed with startling brightness, brief but unforgettable. The people of this age carried these visions within them, painting animals in caves by day and watching the sky's vast herds by night. Imagine lying on your back upon the snow, wrapped in furs, the air so cold that your breath crystallizes. Above you, stars shimmer not as points, but as countless fires, stretching in every direction. You trace shapes among them: a bison, a horse, perhaps a mammoth's curved tusks. The sky becomes a second step, another plane upon which life moves, endlessly, mirrored in light. What if the human sense of wonder was born under skies like these? What if myth itself began not as invention, but as reflection, the heavens retelling the stories of the earth below? Perhaps the first constellations were not gods or heroes, but animals, the mammoth above the mammoth, the lion above the lion, the great hunt written twice, once on land and once in sky. For those who journeyed across continents, the stars became compass and calendar. Their positions marked seasons, their risings and settings guided migrations, their cycles taught patience. The sky was not distant, but immediate. A map held overhead, a pattern repeated every night to remind travelers that they were never truly lost. Now, let yourself imagine gazing upward until time dissolves. The stars do not hurry. The aurora does not rush. The moon hangs heavy, its light spilling silver over snow. In that stillness, you feel the sky not as something above, but as something you are within. The earth below and the heavens above fold into one vast silence, and you drift with it, as though carried on a river of stars. The Ice Age is not one single winter, but a rhythm, a long breathing of the earth. Cold advances, then retreats, then returns again, each cycle drawn out over tens of thousands of years. Glaciers spread across continents, then pull back, leaving valleys and lakes in their wake. The planet tilts, wobbles, shifts in orbit, and with these small motions come immense changes, as if the Earth moves to a cosmic music too slow for human ears. Science names these patterns Milankovitch cycles, variations in the Earth's orbit, axial tilt, and wobble that together shape the waxing and waning of ice. A slight shift in sunlight, spread over millennia, tips the balance between snow that melts and snow that endures. Once snow lingers through summer, glaciers grow. Once summers strengthen, the ice retreats. The rhythm is subtle yet profound, a clock made not of gears but of stars and planets, measuring time on scales far beyond human lifetimes. Imagine watching the seasons stretch over centuries. Each summer grows a little shorter, each winter a little deeper, until generations later the ice begins to spread, unnoticed by any single life. For those who live within it, the world simply is. Cold and snow are not anomalies, but reality. Only the long memory of the earth can trace the rising and falling breath of glacial ages. What if humanity's sense of time was shaped in part by this vast rhythm? What if the knowledge that the world can change so slowly, yet so completely, entered deep into the bones of memory? Perhaps our awareness of cycles, of birth and death, of growth and decay, of seasons repeating, mirrors the planet's own long exhalations. The cycles are not smooth. They are woven with pauses, abrupt, warmings, sudden chills, A glacial age may hold within it brief centuries of thaw, called interstadials, when forests return and animals spread northward, only to retreat again when the cold closes its hand. For those who lived through them, it must have seemed like the world itself was uncertain, hesitating between two fates. Picture a valley where a glacier once pressed. Now, in a brief warming, grass spreads, rivers flow freely, forests return, camps gather, herds thrive, life flourishes. Then, centuries. Later, the ice creeps back, slow but unstoppable, erasing forests, silencing rivers, reclaiming the land. To live here is to learn impermanence not as philosophy, but as daily fact. Now, gently, imagine yourself standing at the edge of one such change. Behind you, the forest murmurs, birdsong flickers in the air. Ahead of you, the horizon gleams white, with advancing ice. The wind carries both warmth and cold, a mingling of seasons in one breath. You feel the earth in transition, caught between pulses of its ancient rhythm. In that moment, you understand that nothing is fixed. Not land, not sky, not even time itself. Fire remembers what the ice forgets. In the cold vastness, it is flame that keeps the fragile thread of human life intact. Each spark passed from one night to the next like a heartbeat against silence. A single ember, coaxed from wood or stone, carries continuity, light where there was none, warmth where the air would otherwise claim breath. The traces remain even after the flames die. Charcoal blackens stone, soot stains cave ceilings, ash settles into soil. Thousands of years later, archaeologists sift through layers of earth and find these remnants. Fragments of burned wood, ringed hearths, scorched rock. They speak of fires, tended in darkness, of hands reaching to warm themselves, of meat roasted when survival hung thin. Fire is memory pressed into the land. Science shows that the control of fire stretches far before the last ice age. Yet here, in this frozen world, its importance deepens. With fire, humans soften hides, harden spear tips, bake clay, and keep predators at bay. But beyond survival, fire shapes imagination. Flames flicker and shift, revealing images in smoke and shadow, dancing across cave walls where animals are, painted in ochre and charcoal. Around fire, stories are spoken, songs are sung. Silence is filled with meaning. Imagine a night on the tundra. The wind lashes outside, snow sweeping across the plain. Inside a shelter of tusks and hides, fire burns steady. Its glow turns the faces of the gathered red and gold. Children lean close, their eyes reflecting the flame. An elder lifts a stone, tool, its edge gleaming, and speaks softly. Every flicker of firelight seems to lend weight to the words. Every crackle punctuates the story. The flame does not only warm bodies, it warms thought, gives shape to memory. What if fire is the first teacher of time? A flame begins, burns, and fades. Sparks rise like stars into the air, brief and bright before vanishing, perhaps watching. This cycle again and again planted the seed of recognition, that all things have beginnings and endings, that life itself follows the rhythm of fire. Could it be that our understanding of transience was first learned at the hearth? Fire remembers, in other ways too. In caves, soot builds on ceilings over centuries, black layers marking each return. A place may hold the record of 1,000 hearths, each one a gathering, a season, a life. The cave becomes a book of flame, written in smoke, read by those who come after. Now let yourself imagine gazing into such a fire. The world outside vanishes into cold and silence. Within the ring of light, warmth holds steady. Sparks rise, shifting like constellations in miniature. Shadows move across walls, becoming animals, becoming ancestors, becoming shapes without names. You feel time not as years, but as flame, alive, flickering, beautiful, and then gone, leaving only the quiet memory of its glow. The rivers of the Ice Age do not flow as ours do. Many vanish, locked in the frozen grip of glaciers. Valleys once carved by water now lie silent, filled with ice or buried beneath drifting loess. Where rivers remain, they are narrower, swifter, bound tightly to their courses, fed by meltwater from the sheets that loom above. Lakes rise and fall unpredictably, some swelling with sudden floods, others drying to cracked basins of dust. The absence of water shapes everything. Forests shrink when rivers disappear, herds scatter in search of pasture, and humans are forced to follow new paths. Camps once placed along steady streams must be abandoned when the flow fades, leaving only traces of fire rings and scattered bones. Water is not merely a resource. It is the axis upon which survival turns. Science finds evidence of these changes in dry riverbeds and carved channels far larger than any modern stream. In North America, the scablands of Washington speak of cataclysmic floods, where glacial dams broke and torrents roared across the land, carving canyons in days. In Europe, valleys carved deep by meltwater still bear the scars of Ice Age rivers, though their courses are now quiet. These landscapes remind us that water, whether absent or unleashed, rewrites the earth with sudden finality. Imagine standing in one of these abandoned valleys. Cliffs rise on either side, their walls polished by the forgotten hand of water. The floor is silent, covered in frost and dust, no sound but the wind. You walk along, knowing that once a river ran here, carrying fish, feeding grass, shaping stone. The silence feels thick, as if the memory of rushing water still lingers in the air. What if rivers, even when gone, continue to exist in some hidden way? Not in water, but in memory, etched into rock, carried in soil, embedded in the instincts of animals who still follow invisible paths where streams once flowed. Perhaps absence itself leaves its own map, guiding life even when the river no longer runs. For those who lived then, the search for water was as constant as the search for food. Hunters learned to read the ground for signs of old streams. 2. Listen for the trickle of melt beneath snow, to follow herds who knew where rivers broke through ice. In a world where water could vanish, awareness itself became survival. Now, let yourself picture kneeling beside a frozen stream. The surface gleams like glass, the current locked beneath, barely audible. You break a hole in the ice, scoop water in your hands, and drink. The cold burns your throat, but it is life itself, drawn from the hidden flow. Around you, the silence of vanished rivers presses close, but here, in this moment, water remains, an ancient presence, moving patiently even under the stillness of ice. The ice does not simply vanish when it melts, it redraws the world. As glaciers retreat, valleys open, lakes form, rivers find new courses. The land, once pressed down beneath immense weight, begins to rise again, slowly, like breath returning after a long silence. Coastlines shift, plains flood, new horizons appear where there was once only white. The earth reshapes itself in the wake of cold. In North America, the retreat of the Laurentide ice sheet leaves behind vast basins that fill with meltwater, the beginnings of the Great Lakes. In Europe, deep fjords remain, carved where glaciers once pressed into stone. Rivers grow swollen with melt, carving fresh channels and scattering silt across floodplains. Everywhere the ice withdraws, new landscapes emerge, strange and young, ready for forests, ready for life. Science tells us that entire ecosystems awaken in these moments. Tundra gives way to steppe to forest. Birch and pine move first, sprouting where soil loosens. Grasses follow, then broad-leafed trees, until green rises again where once only snow lay. Animals move with this change, herds pushing northward, predators close behind, humans adapting to the land's renewal. Each retreat of ice is less an ending than a beginning, a hand clearing a canvas for life to paint anew. Imagine walking across such a land just after the ice has gone. The ground is raw, scarred with ridges of gravel, scattered with boulders carried far from their homes. Pools of meltwater gleam in hollows, reflecting sky like broken mirrors. The air smells sharp, fresh, almost new, as though the earth itself has just woken. With each step, you tread upon ground not walked before, a surface only recently revealed to the light. What if every thaw is also a reminder that change is not only loss, but renewal? Perhaps the earth teaches that endings open into beginnings, that silence becomes sound again, that even in the deepest freeze, the possibility of spring waits. What if the rhythm of ice and melt is not destruction, but balance, a cycle of concealment and revelation? For humans of the time, the thaw means new paths, forests to hunt within, rivers to fish, fertile soil to plant in later ages. Yet it also means floods that sweep camps away, unstable ground that collapses underfoot, unpredictable climates that force new adaptations. Life does not return gently. It surges, messy and wild, reminding all who live within it that change is both gift and trial. Now, let yourself picture standing at the edge of a retreating glacier. Before you lies the raw ground, strewn with stone, dotted with lakes. Behind you, the ice still looms, creaking and dripping as it shrinks. Between these two worlds, frozen and thawed, you feel the earth's heartbeat, slow but certain. The land is being reshaped beneath your gaze, and you, like all who came before, are part of the unfolding rhythm. The people of the Ice Age leave few traces, yet their presence lingers like shadows. We know them through scattered bones, tools buried in loess, ochre marks on stone. But the fullness of their lives, their voices, their songs, the patterns of their thoughts, slips beyond our grasp. Who were they, these forgotten peoples who walked across the tundra, whose names are lost, whose stories were never written? Science gives us fragments. Genetic threads woven into modern bloodlines tell of ancient kin, distant yet enduring. Archaeological finds reveal shelters built with tusks, necklaces strung with shells carried from far coasts, carvings etched into ivory with patient hands. These details whisper of imagination, of connection, of people who saw the world not only as survival, but as mystery. Yet the larger picture remains veiled. We are left with silence where memory should be. Imagine meeting them on the open steppe. A small band approaches, wrapped in hides, carrying spears tipped with flint. Their faces are wind-burnished, their eyes watchful, yet not unkind. They move with the rhythm of herds, their speech foreign yet alive with inflection and song. In their presence you realize how much is both familiar and unknown. They are human, and yet their world is not ours. What if civilizations rose before memory and vanished beneath the ice? Not in the way of cities with stone walls, but in forms we have not imagined. Networks of camps, knowledge passed in oral lines, sacred sites marked in ways that do not survive. Perhaps the land once held, cultures whose traces are drowned beneath rising seas, scattered by glaciers or ground to dust by time. Could the Ice Age carry stories older than history, hidden in places we have yet to look? For those who lived then, identity was shaped by migration, by kinship, by shared fire. Their wealth was not measured in objects but in memory, in skills, taught and retaught in songs carried across generations. To forget was to lose, to remember was to survive. In this way, memory itself was a kind of dwelling, portable and enduring. Now, close your eyes and imagine walking through a camp at dusk. Fires flicker in shallow pits. The smell of meat drifts on the air. Children chase each other across the frost, their laughter bright against the silence. Elders sit close to the flames, eyes reflecting light, voices murmuring stories older than the camp itself. The shelters are fragile, the tools simple, yet the atmosphere is thick with presence, with a people who lived, who dreamed, who are now almost forgotten. In every human body today, fragments of the Ice Age remain. Within our cells, in the twists of DNA, are echoes of those who walked across frozen plains, who lit fires in caves, who hunted mammoths beneath auroras. Genetic traces of Neanderthals, Denisovans, and other kin flow quietly through modern bloodlines, reminders that humanity was never a single story but a braided river, fed by many streams. Science uncovers these threads with care. A bone shard from a Siberian cave, no longer than a finger, yields the entire genome of a girl who lived more than 50,000 years ago. Teeth pulled from permafrost reveal hybrid ancestry, child of Neanderthal and Denisovan, a meeting of two vanished peoples. Sequencing shows that parts of their heritage live on, influencing our immune systems, shaping how our bodies respond to altitude, even affecting the way our skin and hair interact with sunlight. The past is not gone. It flows within us. Imagine this inheritance as a whisper carried forward. Each cell holds faint voices, silent yet insistent. A Neanderthal ancestor who survived in a cold forest, a Denisovan hunter who crossed high plateaus, an unknown lineage whose name we will never know, but whose blood still moves through our veins. When we breathe, when we walk, when we dream, fragments of them stir within us, participating still in the great unfolding of life. What if memory is not only in story and stone, but in flesh itself? What if the body is an archive, carrying lineages like books pressed deep in bone? Perhaps every heartbeat is not only ours, but theirs as well, a continuity that stretches across ages, binding us to lives long vanished. For the people of the Ice Age, ancestry was not read in molecules but felt in presence. Elders carried memory, children carried hope, and the fire in the middle linked all together. Yet, unknowingly, they also carried in their blood the mingling of many lineages, the joining of peoples across distances vast and unknown. Their survival meant the survival of stories we still live, even if we cannot recall the words. Now, let yourself imagine placing your hand over your heart in the silence of the night. Feel the rhythm, steady, unbroken, ancient. In that pulse beats more than your own life. It is the echo of all who endured before you, all who walked across ice and tundra, all who carried fire through the cold. You are not separate from them. You are their continuation, their memory made flesh, their silent song carried forward into the present. The oceans rise again, slow yet unstoppable, reclaiming what the ice had given. As glaciers melt and rivers swell, the seas return to their ancient boundaries, flooding valleys, swallowing plains, erasing the land bridges that once joined continents. The Bering Plain sinks beneath cold waters, turning paths of migration into seabeds. The North Sea, once open grassland, fills with tide and storm. Australia separates from New Guinea, Britain drifts apart from Europe, and islands emerge where once there was continuous earth. The map of the world redraws itself, not in a single stroke, but in thousands of quiet increments. Each year the tide presses a little higher. Each century the shoreline creeps farther inland. For those who live upon these lands, the change is not always sudden, but it is relentless. Camps are abandoned, trails vanish, familiar rivers broaden into estuaries. Memory lingers of paths now drowned, of hunting grounds that lie beneath the waves. Science calls this transgression, the rise of seas as ice retreats. In places like Doggerland, now hidden beneath the North Sea, sonar reveals drowned rivers, ancient hills, even signs of human presence. Stone tools lie buried in silt. Mammoth bones rest where trawlers now haul their nets. These submerged lands were not empty. They were lived in, loved, remembered, until the ocean returned and silence took their place. Imagine standing on such a plain as the water begins to rise. At first, it is seasonal flooding, a marsh that expands each year. Then rivers widen, lakes form, the soil softens. Within generations, the horizon shifts. The sea begins to breathe where once grass swayed. The land becomes memory, held only in story. What if myths of lost lands, of cities beneath the waves, are echoes of this time? What if stories of Atlantis, of drowned kingdoms, of sunken realms, are not inventions, but deep memories of places, consumed by returning seas? Perhaps humanity carries within its imagination the imprint of a world that disappeared beneath water, a grief so ancient it transformed into legend. For those who lived through it, the ocean was both loss and gift. Fish and shellfish became plentiful along the new coasts. Birds gathered in marshes, boats carried people across widening waters. Yet the memory of drowned plains lingered, a reminder that the earth itself is never fixed, that what seems eternal may vanish with the turning of ages. Now, gently, imagine standing on a modern shore. Waves roll in, restless and eternal. Beneath them lies a hidden country, its rivers long silent, its hearths long extinguished. You cannot see it, but you can sense its presence, a ghostly landscape folded into the sea. As the tide pulls back, you feel the weight of time pressing close, the memory of a world lost yet still alive in the deep silence of the ocean. Beneath the frozen ground, bones sleep. Locked in permafrost, shielded from decay, they rest as if time itself has paused. Mammoth tusks curve upward from the soil like pale crescents of a forgotten moon. Wolves lie curled, their fur still clinging, teeth sharp, eyes long closed. Even plants remain. Seeds, pollen, blades of grass, frozen in perfect suspension, waiting in the silence of ice. Science uncovers them with careful hands. In Siberia, entire mammoths emerge from melting ground, their flesh intact, their last, meals still preserved in their stomachs. Horses, foals, even cave lion cubs lie cradled in the permafrost, as if they had only just lain down to sleep. Geneticists sequence their DNA, reading ancient codes like pages from a book held shut for thousands of years. The permafrost becomes not only a tomb, but a library of vanished lives. Imagine standing at the edge of such a thaw. The soil slumps where the ice within it melts, revealing bones that gleam against dark earth. The air carries a sharp scent, cold, mineral, tinged with something older, almost animal. You kneel, brush away the soil, and touch a fragment of ivory. It is smooth, curved, vast in your hand. The creature it belonged to is gone, yet here its presence endures, unbroken across millennia. What if these bones are not only remains but messages? What if the earth, in preserving them, keeps memory for us, holding fragments of a world we would otherwise never know? Perhaps permafrost is the planet's own archive, a way of resisting forgetting, of saying, "This, too, was part of me." For the people of the Ice Age, bones were not only relics but resources. Tusks became spears, shelters, ornaments. Skulls lined the entrances of dwellings. Each fragment carried weight, not just of utility, but of reverence. To hold bone was to hold both death and endurance, the evidence of survival and the reminder of fragility, And yet, even in their use, the bones whispered of mystery. The size of a mammoth skull, the length of its tusks, the sheer presence of such remains. These must have stirred awe, even fear. Did people see them as gifts, as ancestors, as spirits sleeping in the ground? Perhaps each discovery was both, practical and sacred, a moment of survival and of story. Now let yourself picture walking through a frozen valley at dusk. The ground crunches beneath your boots, the air still and sharp. Ahead, a tusk curves from the earth, half buried, gleaming pale in the fading light. Around it lies silence. No herd, no hunter, no cry of wolf. Only the memory of what once lived, preserved in ice, waiting for eyes to find it again. You pause, listening, and in that quiet moment you feel not only the presence of bone, but the presence of time itself. Sometimes the vanished herds return in thought, not as ghosts, but as futures that might have been. In that quiet place where history and dream touch, mammoths move like traveling hills through falling snow, their tusks pale arcs against city, lights that did not exist in their own age. Bison gather on winter boulevards as if the asphalt were a black river frozen in place. A woolly rhinoceros noses aside adrift at the edge of a wind farm, blades turning like slow stars above its shaggy shoulders. It is not spectacle. It is simply life continuing. The world still keeps a few giants, elephants that test the edges of savanna and forest, rhinos that hold their ground like low mountains, bison that keep a memory of the steppe alive on plains. Science reminds that others lingered almost into our age. Mammoths survived on an Arctic island until only a few thousand years ago, their last footfalls fading as pyramids rose under different skies. Ground sloths slept in caves long after the ice withdrew. A memory of megafauna remains not just in bone, but in time near enough to touch. What if those lines had not broken? What if the cold herds stepped across the threshold into our present, not as resurrected curiosities but as unbroken neighbors? The mind turns the idea like a river stone, finding smooth possibilities on each side. Snow falls quieter where mammoths walk, their feet packing a path that becomes a winter road for fox and hare. Birch thickets stay open under their sweeping tusks. Grasses return in bright swaths beneath long daylight. The land learns to breathe in broad syllables again. A grounding detail threads the dream. Large grazers alter landscapes. On tundra, hooves can punch through crusted snow so that winter cold reaches the soil, strengthening the freeze that holds carbon fast. Trampling can keep shrubs from knitting a net that darkens snow and draws more sun. On temperate plains, grazing and dung move nutrients outward like slow, living rain. If the old herds endure, their work continues. More than bodies, they are processes, rhythms, verbs. The sound of a city shifts in this imagined world. Night traffic pauses at crossings, where dark backs flow like a living dune sea from river to meadow. Sirens hold silence while calves pass between tusks that gleam briefly under sodium lamps. In the morning, a fog lifts to show hoofprints impressed beside bicycle tracks. Birds design new routes across a skyline stitched with crane and cliff, choosing updrafts born from warm bodies and sunlit towers together. What if human culture rests differently when giants remain at the edge of sight? Perhaps architecture grows with softer margins. Boulevards left wider where herds are known to pass. Bridges arched shallower to slow the river so that belly-deep crossings stay safe. Maybe language keeps more names for snow pressed by foot, for grass bitten twice, for the smell that rises when warm breath strikes rime. Children learn the calendar by the months when hair sheds from mammoth flanks in windrows, when bulls go solitary, when the bison calves' coats turn from red to brown. Time pulses not only with school and harvest, but with movement, mass, and fur. There is a symbolic image that returns again and again. A lantern held in a mittened hand, its circle of light catching the ribbed curve of a tusk leaning out of darkness, like a crescent moon fallen to earth. The lantern is human scale, small, brief, tender. The tusk belongs to something the size of weather. Between them stands the relation that Ice Age people carried as skill and reverence both, nearness without possession, attention without dominion. Science offers caution within the dream. Giants and farms do not always braid easily. Crops are fragile beside hunger, large as a hillside. Pathogens travel with bodies and mud. Fences break. Roads wound migrations. Fear answers what it does not recognize with walls. Yet, even within this realism, another question whispers. What if cohabitation is a practice rather than an achievement, learned the way fire was learned, slowly, carefully across generations, by watching how the flame behaves and giving it room? Picture a winter field left pale for passage. A line of dark shapes approaches at dusk, breath rising like soft banners, snow grains whispering beneath heavy steps. Overhead, the grid of power lines hums faintly, and beyond it, the first star pricks through an urban glow that is less fierce than the Ice Age night but still knows how to open. People stand back, not with cameras alone, but with a listening that remembers the cave's hush. The herd goes by. Nothing is taken. Everything is received. What if art looks outward again because giants ask it to? Murals on concrete carry the old line. Shoulder, spine, flank, the down tilt of a long skull, the live geometry that breath once taught to stone. Music holds a low register more often, making room for foot weight and heartbeat. Poetry broadens, its vowels to match a plane rediscovered at city's edge. The presence of mass resets the scale of metaphor. The mind remembers that a thought can move like weather, not only like wire. A river changes pace where bodies cross. Silt swirls and settles differently. Reeds take root in new arrangements. Fish find shadow under legs that were not here in other centuries. Downstream, a delta draws itself with a thicker line. On high ground, the snow pattern tells stories. Long, shallow troughs of moving bodies, small round punches of fox and stoat weaving among them, the feathered brushwork of wind. On surfaces already written, a landscape becomes a palimpsest, daily renewed by passage. There is a gentler industry in this quiet future. Instead of erasing hoof and tusk with speed, people design with them. Culverts wide as river memory, corridors that run not straight, but like the mind of a herd, curving around old stones, seeking shallow grades, preferring open throat of sky. Where roads must cross, they cross with bridges dressed in soil and grass, so that the bridge is not a line that divides, but a hill that carries. The economy is less a machine than a pasture managed so it can manage itself. What if fear loosens when scale returns? When a child watches a calf's ear flick like a banner in wind, learns the difference between the slow alertness of grazing and the dense focus of a startled halt, learns the etiquette of distance the way grammar was once learned, by exposure, correction, practice. Could a city rediscover courtesy as a form of ecology? Perhaps the lesson is older than law. Share the path, leave room, be present, move slowly when something larger than you is thinking with its feet. A grounding whisper persists. In some northern places today, people test whether returning hooves can cool the ground, brighten snow, open grass. The results are not verdicts. They are conversations in progress. The earth answers slowly, but it does answer. Now gently, the invitation. Imagine a dusk after snowfall. Street lamps extend small suns along a park's edge. Far beyond, the skyline keeps its calm geometry against a violet sky. Between them, a procession passes, quiet as weather. Adult, calf, adult, calf. The rhythm so steady that breath falls into step without being asked. No one claims the moment. It simply occurs, like tide, like dawn. In their wake, the prints curve away into a meadow that will green early because heavy feet broke winter's crust. What if this is less a fantasy than a manner of remembering what a landscape can be when bodies and seasons keep company? The answer need not arrive. The question itself holds enough warmth to last the night. In the soft scrape of snow under weight, in the low cloud of breath, in the lantern circle sliding. Across a tusk's pale arc, a possible world moves past, close, patient, and astonishingly gentle. The rhythm of ice is steady, older than memory. Advance, retreat, advance again, like the slow beating of a planetary heart. Glaciers grow across continents, stretching their white weight southward. Then, centuries later, they loosen their grip, shrinking back, giving space for rivers and forests to return. The cycle repeats, unhurried, as though the earth itself inhales and exhales through ages. Science gives shape to this rhythm. Each pulse of cold is drawn from the geometry of Earth's orbit, the tilt of its axis, the stretch of its path around the sun, the subtle wobble that shifts the timing of seasons. These Milankovitch cycles do not shout, they whisper, yet their whispers move mountains, raise and lower seas, decide whether ice holds or melts. The earth dances to a cosmic pattern, invisible to those who live within it. Imagine watching the centuries pass like breaths. Snow lingers longer each year, glaciers push forward, rivers choke beneath ice. Then, millennia later, the sun's warmth gathers, summers lengthen, ice thins, valleys green. The cycle is too slow for a single lifetime to notice, but across generations, the world itself transforms. For those who walk upon it, the rhythm is not theory but reality. Home shifting underfoot, horizons remade in silence. What if this rhythm shapes not only land but thought? What if humanity's deep sense of cycles, birth and death, growth and decay, the turning of seasons, mirrors the pulse of ice and thaw? Perhaps our very imagination of time, circular and recurring, is born from living within a planet that breathes in ice. In the quiet of the Ice Age, this rhythm is felt most sharply. Families move south as winters deepen, then return north when summers grow softer. Herds expand, then contract, their numbers rising and falling like the glaciers themselves. Even fire and story seem to follow the same cadence, brightness flaring, fading to embers, then kindled again. All of life becomes a reflection of the Earth's long, patient heartbeat. Now, let yourself picture standing before a glacier at dusk. The ice groans faintly, shifting forward as it has for centuries. Behind you, a valley lies raw, recently uncovered by retreat. In both directions, the world speaks of change, of motion too vast to measure by days. You breathe slowly, feeling your own chest rise and fall, and for a moment you sense the likeness, the small rhythm within you echoing the vast rhythm around you, the pulse of heart and the pulse of earth, both beating quietly into time. The sky of endless time stretches, above the Ice Age vast and unbroken. On nights of stillness, when wind rests and snow lies quiet, the heavens feel impossibly close, their patterns sharp as carved stone. Stars glitter without veil, more numerous than grains of sand, flowing in their eternal river across the dome of night. To those who gaze upward, they are not remote, they are companions, silent witnesses to every fire, every step, every breath. Planets wander among them, steady lights that shift from week to week, marking time in ways the sun and moon cannot. Venus gleams at dawn like a shard of polished bone. Jupiter burns with constant brilliance. The moon rises heavy, casting shadows on the snow, washing the plains in a silver so bright that nights resemble day. And when auroras unfurl, they transform. the sky into motion. Bands of green and violet rippling like banners, a dance of unseen forces across the cold air. Science reveals the patience of these lights. The stars are suns, most older than our world, their light traveling for hundreds or thousands of years before touching the snow of the Ice Age. To look upward is to see the past, ancient fires still arriving, long after the source has shifted, or gone dark. The people who watched from tundra and cave saw a sky filled not only with presence but with memory. Imagine lying on your back upon frozen ground, wrapped in furs, your body warm from the fire's glow. Above you stretches the Milky Way, brighter than anything known to modern eyes. Each cluster seems alive, each pattern sharp. You trace them with thought, connecting them into figures. A mammoth with curved tusks, a great bird, a hunter drawing. His bow. The sky becomes a second Earth, another plane upon which stories can walk. What if constellations are not inventions, but recognitions? What if humans looked upward and saw not abstractions, but reflections of the life around them? Perhaps the first myths were simply mirrors. Bison above bison, lions above lions, mammoths written in starlight to remind hunters that the rhythms of earth and sky are one. For those who traveled, the sky was compass and guide. Stars marked, directions, rising in the east, setting in the west, returning each season with precision. They told when herds would move, when rivers would thaw, when the cold would deepen again. The sky was not distant, it was woven into survival, as intimate as fire, as present as the wind. Now, gently, imagine yourself beneath this sky of endless time. The silence of the plains surrounds you, broken only by the faint crack of ice, the low breath of animals near. Above, galaxies spill their light without haste, without end. You feel yourself small, yet not diminished, part of a cosmos that has always watched, always waited. The stars do not speak, yet their stillness carries meaning, a reminder that time extends beyond measure, and that even in the cold silence of ice, the universe shines on. Deep within the earth, caves breathe, their mouths open like quiet invitations, leading into darkness where air cools and echoes wait. For the people of the Ice Age, these hidden places become more than shelter. They are sanctuaries, thresholds, spaces where firelight and imagination intertwine. The walls receive pigment, carvings, and sound, becoming vessels for memory. Inside, the atmosphere shifts. Torches crackle, their smoke clinging to ceilings. Shadows ripple across stone, alive with every flicker of flame. Here, hands press ochre against the rock, leaving stencils like signatures of presence. Lines trace the curves of bison, mammoths, and horses, their bodies taking shape from the stone itself. The cave becomes a living canvas, images shifting. As light moves, animals appearing to breathe in the dim glow. Science uncovers these places in careful silence. Lascaux in France, Chauvet, Altamira in Spain, Sulawesi in Indonesia, each reveals walls alive with Ice Age art. Radiocarbon tells us some are over 30,000 years old, older than many rivers' current paths, older than the seas that cover lost plains. In some chambers, acoustics resonate so strongly that a human voice feels doubled, as though the cave itself is answering. The earth participates in the act of expression. Imagine a small gathering deep inside such a chamber. The air is thick, with smoke, but quiet with reverence. An elder hums, the sound swelling into resonance. Children watch as an animal emerges in pigment, the lines firm yet flowing. For a moment, the boundary between human and world dissolves. What is painted is not separate from what is hunted, not separate from what is dreamed. What if the cave itself is teacher? What if stepping inside its silence allows the mind to expand, to imagine beyond immediate survival? Perhaps art and story are not luxuries of abundance, but tools of endurance, ways to weave meaning into hardship, to create continuity in a world of change. The breath of the cave holds more than images. Charcoal drifts into soil. Bones lie buried. In the floor, footprints remain pressed in mud that hardened to stone. Each is a trace of presence, a reminder that others once entered, carrying fire, carrying thought. The cave becomes both archive and companion, remembering even when those who painted are gone. Now, let yourself imagine standing in such a chamber. Your torch sputters, light spilling across a wall alive with ochre horses and shadowed bison. The air hums faintly with echoes of your breath. You press your hand against the stone, feeling its coolness, its permanence. Around you, silence gathers, deep and steady. In that moment, you are no longer only a visitor. You are part of a conversation that has continued across tens of thousands of years, held in the breath of caves. The last cold dawn rises slowly, pale light spilling across a world in transition. Glaciers groan as they shrink, their edges dripping into streams that widen with each season. Valleys once buried begin to breathe again. Rivers find their voices. Forests stir at the margins. The long winter of the Ice Age loosens its grip, though it does not vanish all at once. The change is patient, yet unstoppable. Across the plains, herds shift northward. Mammoths and bison wander into lands newly uncovered, their footprints pressing into fresh soil. Birds return to forests that had retreated for millennia, their songs breaking a silence long held. Plants, too, awaken, birch and pine spreading where only moss and lichen once endured. The world feels new, raw, and uncertain, caught between two ages, the age of ice receding, the age of warmth not yet secure. Science shows that this moment comes in waves. The younger Dryas, a sudden return of cold, interrupts the thaw for over 1,000 years before warmth finally settles. Even as glaciers retreat, they pause, advance again, then collapse in bursts of meltwater that flood valleys and reshape coasts. The shift is not smooth but jagged, marked by interruptions, as though the earth hesitates before stepping fully into another rhythm. Imagine standing on a ridge at dawn, watching sunlight spread across a valley still half in shadow. Below, meltwater, pools and new lakes, mist rising above their surface. A mammoth moves slowly through the haze, its breath visible in the cold air. Behind it, the glacier looms, its blue walls gleaming, shrinking, alive with cracks. You realize you are watching an ending and a beginning at once, a threshold drawn in ice and light. What if the world always carries such thresholds within it? What if history is less a straight path and more a series of dawns, each one blending? Darkness and light, ending and beginning. Perhaps the last cold dawn is not unique but part of a greater rhythm, the Earth's way of reminding life that nothing is fixed, that all ages eventually shift. For humans, this thaw brings opportunity and challenge. New lands open for hunting and gathering. Rivers swell with fish. Forests offer wood and shelter. Yet the melting also brings floods that erase camps, storms that lash the coasts, and a climate still unstable. To live through this time is to live with uncertainty, to trust that adaptation will continue to guide survival. Now, gently, picture yourself in this dawn. The air is crisp, carrying both the scent of frost and the freshness of thawing earth. The sun edges higher, casting long golden beams across snowfields and green shoots alike. Around you, the world shifts, slow yet undeniable. You breathe deeply, sensing the turning of an age. And in that breath, you know that the Ice Age, though ending, has left its mark forever, etched into land, into memory, into the quiet rhythm of time itself. The memory of ice lingers long after it melts. Even when valleys green and forests return, the land still bears the scars of glaciers, the gouges of U-shaped valleys, the scatter of boulders dropped like forgotten thoughts, the sweep of ridges made from gravel and sand. Lakes gleam where ice once pressed, rivers wind along paths first carved by meltwater. The earth itself carries the handwriting of cold, a script too vast to erase. Science reads this writing carefully. Moraines mark the edges of vanished glaciers, eskers trace the tunnels of rivers that once flowed beneath ice. Kettle lakes lie where blocks of frozen mass melted slowly into the ground. Each feature is a page of the planet's memory, revealing not only where the ice stood, but how it moved, how it breathed, how it shaped everything that followed. Imagine walking through such a landscape centuries after the thaw. The hills are gentle, rolling like waves frozen in soil. A lake shimmers, its water deep and cold, its basin carved by ice long gone. Birds fill the air with song, yet beneath their music lies another silence, the silence of forms left behind, reminders of a world that no longer exists. The land itself whispers, "The ice was here." What if the earth remembers more deeply than we realize? What if every valley, every ridge, every stone worn smooth is not simply geology, but testimony, silent witnesses to ages before us? Perhaps landscapes themselves are archives, telling stories for those who know how to listen, carrying within them the voices of ice, fire, and time. For humans, these inherited shapes guide life. Fertile soil rests where glaciers left rich deposits. Rivers run where meltwater once carved paths. Harbors and coastlines trace the edges of drowned valleys. Our cities, our fields, our roads, all rest upon a map drawn by glaciers. Even without knowing, we live daily in the memory of ice. And yet memory shifts with perception. To some, a valley is only pasture. To others, it is a record of time. To walk through such places with awareness is to walk through history older than any civilization, older than any myth. The land does not speak in words, but in form, in silence, in persistence. Now, let yourself imagine standing at the shore of a glacial lake at twilight. The water reflects the fading light, rippling with colors of silver and blue. Around you rise hills shaped not by human hands, but by the long patience of ice. The air is still, as if listening. In that quiet, you feel the weight of memory pressing. Close, not your memory but the earth's, deep and enduring, carved into every curve of stone and water. Even as the ice retreats, its breath lingers in the sky. Winds still carry the rhythm of glaciers, sweeping across plains, stirring dust into long veils that drift for miles. Seasons stumble as the climate finds new balance. Summers short, winters long, storms unpredictable. The planet does not shift suddenly from one age to another. It wavers, hesitates, as though remembering the cold even while learning warmth again. Science traces these hesitations in cores of ice and lake mud. Layers of pollen show forests advancing, then pausing, then retreating again. Sudden chills like the younger Dryas interrupt the thaw, pulling the earth back into cold for over 1,000 years. Temperatures swing in centuries, not days, yet to those who live within them, the change feels abrupt, disorienting. Stability does not come easily. The planet trembles as it turns the page. Imagine living through such years. One generation grows, with milder winters, rivers swelling, grasses spreading north. They believe the cold is ending. Then the next generation faces deeper snow, frozen streams, forests withering under sudden frost. Each memory contradicts the last. Stories must adjust, knowledge must bend, survival must continue even as the world itself seems uncertain. What if uncertainty is the true gift of such times? What if the lack of stability sharpened awareness, taught resilience, and trained imagination? Perhaps humanity's ability to adapt, to wander, to invent, was honed by this very unpredictability. The necessity of responding not to one steady climate, but to a world in constant flux. The landscape reflects this tension. Rivers change course, abruptly under floods of meltwater. Valleys open where ice collapses, then close again under advancing snow. Forests begin to spread, but their edges die back, leaving stumps where once green leaves unfurled. Animals shift with the seasons, herds moving erratically, predators forced to follow in unfamiliar patterns. Life itself wavers with the rhythm of change. Now, let yourself picture standing on a hillside as seasons twist. In one year, the slope before you is green, dotted with flowers and the movement of grazing herds. The next, it lies pale beneath, heavy snow, silent, the herds gone. You look upward at the sky, clouds moving fast, winds sharp and shifting. In that moment, you feel the truth. The world is never fixed, never certain. It breathes, it changes, it remembers both cold and warmth. And you, small and brief, move within its vast, trembling rhythm. The Ice Age does not vanish. It fades. Bit by bit, its presence withdraws, leaving fragments behind like echoes. Glaciers shrink into mountain ranges, their vast sheets broken into smaller tongues of ice. Tundra gives way to forests, steppe to meadow, rivers to lakes. Mammoths linger in isolated pockets. Bison and reindeer retreat northward, while new animals move into the warming lands. The earth shifts into a different rhythm, yet the memory of cold remains everywhere. Science marks this transition around 12,000 years ago, as the Holocene begins. Temperatures rise, seas return, forests spread swiftly across continents. Human life shifts as well. No longer only hunters of the cold plains, people begin to sow seeds, to build villages, to shape landscapes intentionally. The Ice Age ends, and with it a way of living that lasted for millennia. But the traces do not disappear. They remain beneath our feet, in the land, in our blood, in our imagination. Imagine the last of the great herds crossing a plain that will soon be forest. Their tusks and horns rise against a horizon already softening with green. Behind them, glaciers gleam in retreat, their edges dripping, their voices growing faint. Ahead lies a world not of endless ice, but of change, growth, and uncertainty. The animals walk, unaware that they are among the last to move through such a landscape, carrying the memory of an age with them into silence. What if the Ice Age is not gone, but simply transformed? What if its lessons remain in cycles of climate, in stories of flood and fire, in the human need to remember what was endured? Perhaps every winter is a small echo, every glacier in the mountains a remnant, every myth of cold and darkness a fragment of memory carried forward. The Ice Age may end, but its presence lingers, woven into the fabric of life. For humanity, this fading is both loss and beginning. The animals that once defined survival vanish, but new possibilities open. Fields to plant, rivers to settle, communities to grow. Yet deep within, the memory of ice persists. In caution, in resilience, in the awareness that the world can change profoundly. Civilization rises not apart from the Ice Age, but because of it, rooted in the endurance it required. Now, let yourself imagine standing at the threshold of this new age. Behind you stretches the silence of ice, the long winters, the auroras. Above, frozen plains. Before you spreads a green world, alive with rivers and forests. You are balanced between two immensities, carrying both memory and hope. The Ice Age has ended, but its echo follows you, a quiet presence that never truly fades. The Ice Age becomes story. Its glaciers retreat, its herds diminish, Its fires grow into villages and cities. Yet within us, its memory lingers like an undercurrent, shaping our bodies, our cultures, our imagination. The great silence of snow still echoes in winter nights. The awe of auroras still stirs when light ripples across the sky. The patience of glaciers remains in the stones beneath our feet, carved and smoothed by cold long gone. Science continues to read its traces. Ice cores preserve its breath. Tree rings recall its final centuries. Sediments carry pollen from vanished steppes. Each record whispers of a time when the planet's rhythms were larger than any story we could hold. The Ice Age is no longer our present, but it is still our inheritance, carried in land, in blood, in the deep recesses of memory. Imagine sitting beside a modern fire, safe in a world warmed by civilization. Outside, snow falls softly, blanketing the ground in silence. You close your eyes, and for a moment you are there again, on the tundra, watching mammoths move across a frozen horizon, hearing the crack of ice beneath glaciers, gazing upward, into a sky filled with sharp stars. Time folds, and the memory of ice is alive once more. What if the Ice Age is not simply past, but part of us, an enduring presence that shapes how we see the world? Perhaps our fascination with cold landscapes, with mountains, with stars, is a quiet inheritance from those who lived when the earth itself was frozen. Perhaps resilience, imagination, and story are the true gifts of the Ice Age, carried forward through generations as silent companions. The Age of Ice is gone, but its lessons remain, that nothing is fixed, that life adapts, that silence can hold meaning as profound as sound. To remember the Ice Age is not to mourn, but to recognize continuity, to feel the breath of the earth through cycles vast and unending. Now, let yourself drift into this thought. The glaciers are gone, but their memory endures. The fires of the Ice Age are out, but their warmth lingers in story. The herds are silent, yet their echoes remain in caves, in bones, in the rhythm of our imagination. The Ice Age does not end. It transforms into memory, into myth, into the quiet dream of Earth itself. The Ice Age loosens its hold, but its silence lingers like snow that never quite melts. The glaciers withdraw into mountains. The herds fade into memory. And yet the echo of that world remains in stone, in soil, in our own blood. To think of it now is to feel time stretch far beyond our lives, to sense the planet breathing slowly, patiently, through ages. Imagine the sky above that frozen world, auroras rippling, stars burning sharp, the moon laying silver across endless plains. Imagine the hush of snow, the slow tread of mammoths, the flicker of firelight against cave walls where hands left their mark. These images do not vanish. They drift softly through the corridors of memory, waiting for us to pause, to listen, to remember. What if every winter is a quiet echo of that age? What if the silence we feel on a snowy night, the breath of cold on our skin, is a reminder of the patience of glaciers, the endurance of life, the resilience of spirit? The Ice Age may be gone, but its presence moves gently through us, like a dream half remembered yet never lost. And so we come to rest. The herds have passed beyond the horizon. The fires have burned low. The glaciers lie quiet, retreating into darkness. Above, the stars still shine, carrying their ancient light across the silence of the night. Let the thought settle. Let the rhythm of breath slow. You are small, and you are vast, carried in the same patience that shaped mountains, that carved valleys, that held the earth in silence for an age. The Ice Age is not only history, it is memory, it is rhythm, it is the quiet heartbeat of time itself. Sleep well.